Imagine a river. Some days, its surface is a frantic rush, a turbulent churn of mud and debris, swept along in a powerful, chaotic current. This is the mind we have come to know in our modern world. It is a mind filled with the endless churn of notifications, the relentless pressure of deadlines, the ghost-like echoes of past regrets, and the anxious whispers of future worries. We live on the surface of this river, tossed about by its unpredictable waves, believing that this chaos is the entirety of our existence. But deep beneath that turbulent surface, at the very bed of the river, the water is always still. It is clear, silent, and undisturbed. This deep, quiet water is not affected by the storm raging above. The frantic surface is not the true nature of the river, and the noisy, agitated mind is not the true nature of who you are. We have simply forgotten this. We have learned to live on this chaotic surface, to identify ourselves completely with its turmoil. We say, I am stressed, I am anxious, I am overwhelmed, as if these states are the very core of our being. We mistake the passing weather for the eternal sky. Our feeling of being stuck, of being trapped in a cycle of worry and dissatisfaction, does not truly come from our jobs, our relationships, or our circumstances. It comes from this fundamental misunderstanding, from clinging to the relentless flow of thoughts, unaware of how to access the profound stillness that lies at our very center. The wisdom of the Buddhist path is not a complex belief system you must adopt, nor is it an escape from the realities of life. It is, more simply, a map. It is a guide that shows us the way back home to the primordial stillness that has always been our birthright. This journey is not about adding another layer of belief, another technique, another identity. It is a journey of subtraction, of gently letting go. It is a process of discovering a treasure that is already and has always been in our possession. Together, we are going to explore that space. That silent, aware, and peaceful space that exists right here, in this moment, in the gap between our breaths, in the silence just before a thought arises. To truly appreciate the deep, silent water, we must first have the courage to look at the turbulent surface. We must understand the nature of the storm, not to judge it, not to condemn it, but to know it with a compassionate and steady gaze. In the traditions of the East, this agitated state of mind has a name. It is called the monkey mind. It is the part of our consciousness that leaps restlessly from one branch to another, never still, chattering endlessly, grabbing for this, pushing away that. For centuries, this has been a part of the human condition. But today, in our world, this is more than just a passing state. It has become an epidemic of noise, a constant, low-grade fever of the soul. Let us first examine the environment in which our mind now lives. Our consciousness did not evolve for the world we have built. For millennia, the human mind had natural pauses. There were moments of simply watching the fire, of walking without purpose, of looking at the stars without needing to name them. There were gaps of silence, of boredom, of simple being. These gaps were the soil in which wisdom and tranquility could grow. Today, that soil has been paved over. Every spare moment, every gap, is instantly filled. The phantom buzz of the phone in our pocket, the endless, hypnotizing scroll of a social media feed, the constant stream of news, opinions, and advertisements. Our attention, our most precious and finite resource, is being systematically fractured, harvested, and sold. We are being trained every second of every day for distraction. The ability to place our focus on one single thing, to rest our awareness gently and hold it steady, has become a kind of superpower. For most of us, our attention is like a butterfly caught in a hurricane, flitting from one fleeting stimulus to the next. This isn't a personal failure. It is not a weakness in your character. It is the result of a powerful and pervasive conditioning. We are living in a global architecture of distraction, and the consequence is a mind that feels perpetually drained, scattered, and unable to come home to itself. Within this externally noisy world, the monkey mind finds fertile ground for its favorite activity, time travel. The unsettled mind rarely lives in the present moment. The present is merely a brief, often uncomfortable layover on a frantic journey between two destinations. the past, and the future. The past, for the monkey mind, is a vast and dusty museum of grievances. It is a library of every mistake you have ever made, every awkward conversation, every moment of shame or regret. The mind compulsively wanders these halls, rereading the same sad stories, reopening old wounds, reliving arguments, and imagining what it should have said. This is not the wise process of learning from experience. This is the neurotic process of rumination, of being chained to a corpse. We drag the weight of yesterday into the light of today and wonder why everything feels so heavy. When it is not rummaging through the past, the mind catapults itself into the future. And the future, for the anxious mind, is a territory of what if. It is a dark forest teeming with imaginary monsters. We spend our precious energy pre-living 1,000 catastrophic scenarios, most of which will never come to pass. What if I lose my job? What if they don't like me? What if I get sick? What if I fail? The body, unable to distinguish between a vividly imagined threat and a real one, responds accordingly. The heart beats faster, the muscles tense, the breath becomes shallow. We are living in a state of chronic, low-grade fight or flight, triggered not by a predator in the wild, but by the ghosts we have created in our own imagination. Life, the actual, tangible, breathing reality of this one and only moment, becomes lost. It is a fleeting instant, obscured by the long shadows of a past that is gone and a future that does not exist. As if this relentless time travel were not exhausting enough, our modern condition adds another layer of burden, the tyranny of optimization fueled by an unprecedented level of choice. This is the pressure to constantly improve, to manage ourselves like a business, to turn the simple act of living into a project that must be endlessly refined. We are told to optimize our diet, our workout, our sleep, our career, our relationships. Our leisure time itself has become a source of anxiety. Am I reading the right books? Am I watching the most acclaimed series? Am I pursuing a hobby that will also build my personal brand? This creates a subtle but pervasive sense of inadequacy. It whispers that you, just as you are right now, are not quite enough. The quiet, simple state of just being is recategorized as laziness or a wasted opportunity, and the sheer volume of choices we face, from the monumental to the mundane, depletes our mental reserves. This is the phenomenon of decision fatigue. By the end of the day, the mind is so exhausted from making countless, often trivial, choices that it has no energy left for what truly matters: presence, connection, and peace. There is a story of a man who comes across a beautiful, tranquil mountain lake. He sits by its shore, admiring the way it perfectly mirrors the sky. But a light breeze stirs, and small ripples disturb the surface. The reflection is broken. The man, wanting to restore the perfect stillness, finds a long stick and begins to beat at the ripples. He frantically slaps the water, trying to force it into submission, trying to flatten the waves. But of course, his very actions, his desperate, well-intentioned efforts, only create more turmoil. The water becomes a chaos of splashes and waves, more agitated than ever before. His struggle is the very source of the disturbance he seeks to eliminate. Exhausted and defeated, he finally drops the stick. He gives up, he simply sits on the shore, breathing, and watches the mess he has made. And as he sits, as he stops fighting, the breeze naturally dies down. The frantic waves slowly subside. The water, of its own accord, without any effort on his part, gradually returns to a state of perfect, glassy stillness. It settles itself. We are that man. Our unsettled mind is that lake. Our anxieties, our restless thoughts are the ripples, and our constant, frantic efforts to fix our minds, to stop our thoughts, to force ourselves to be calm, are the stick hitting the water. We think the problem is the anxiety, the thought, the feeling. We believe that if we can just fight it hard enough, analyze it enough, or distract ourselves from it enough, we can make it go away. But all that struggle, that resistance, is just more noise. It is another layer of mental activity that perpetuates the very disturbance we wish to end. This is why, for so many of us, external silence is no longer enough. We might escape to a quiet room, go on a retreat, or sit in a silent forest, only to find that the noise is not outside of us. We carry the storm within. In the absence of external distractions, the inner monologue can become a deafening roar. The monkey mind, with no new branches to leap to, simply leaps with more frantic energy between the old familiar branches of worry and regret. The peace we seek cannot be found by simply changing our location. It must be found by changing our relationship to our own mind. The first step on this journey, then, is not one of action, but of recognition. It is the wisdom of the man at the lake. It is to, metaphorically, drop the stick. It is to see the frantic, unsettled, time-traveling nature of your own mind, and to not add a second layer of judgment or struggle. To see the anxiety and not become anxious about being anxious. To see the distraction and not berate yourself for being distracted. To simply see. This seeing, this clear, compassionate awareness is the beginning of peace. For when you stop fighting the waves, you give them the space to settle on their own. Having looked directly at the storm, having understood the futility of our struggle against it, the next question naturally arises. If we are not to fight, what are we to do? We need an anchor, a simple, reliable point of stability that we can return to in the midst of the chaos. A focal point that can hold our attention gently but firmly in the one place the monkey mind fears to tread, the present moment. That anchor, profoundly simple and always available, is the foundation of this entire practice. It is your own breath. In the midst of the storm we have just described, in the heart of the inner chaos, our first instinct is to fight, to control, or to flee. We have seen the futility of this struggle, the way our resistance only churns the waters further. The path of wisdom, then, begins not with a fight, but with finding a point of stability. We are not trying to stop the hurricane, but to find its calm, still center. We are looking for an anchor. An anchor is not meant to eliminate the ocean's waves. It is meant to hold the ship steady amidst them. We are fortunate because this anchor is not something we need to buy or build or seek in a faraway land. It is already with us. It has been with us from the first moment of our life, and it will be with us until the very last. It is the most simple, reliable, and intimate process of our existence, the rhythm of our own breath. The breath is the ultimate bridge. In our normal, distracted state, the mind and the body are often strangers to each other. The body is always, unequivocally, in the present moment. Your body cannot be in yesterday. It cannot be anxious about next Tuesday. It can only be right here, right now, experiencing the physical realities of this instant. The mind, as we know, is a time traveler, constantly lost in the ghosts of the past or the phantoms of the future. The breath is the link that joins these two estranged parts of ourselves. Because breathing is a physical process, it happens only in the now. You cannot breathe in the past. You cannot exhale in the future. To bring your awareness to your breath is to gently but firmly take the wandering mind by the hand and lead it back home to the body, back home to the only moment where life is actually happening. It is an act of profound homecoming. Every time you consciously connect with an inhalation and an exhalation, you are closing the gap between the thinking self and the feeling, living self. You are becoming whole again. The ancient practice of cultivating this connection is known as anapanasati, which simply means mindfulness of breathing. It is an art of exquisite simplicity. It begins with finding a posture that communicates a quiet dignity to your body. You can sit on a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your spine upright but not rigid. You can sit cross-legged on a cushion, or you can lie down on your back. The key is to be comfortable yet alert. It is a posture that says, I am here and I am awake. Then you simply extend an invitation for your attention to come to rest on the sensations of breathing. This is not a command. It is not a forceful act of concentration. It is a gentle allowing. You can choose a primary focal point, a spot where the sensation of the breath is most vivid for you. For some, this is the tip of the nostrils, feeling the subtle coolness of the air as it enters. and the slight warmth as it leaves. For others, it is the expansion and release of the chest. Or perhaps it is the gentle rise and fall of the abdomen, like a calm wave on the ocean. Choose one of these spots and let your awareness rest there, as you would rest your hand on the head of a beloved pet. Now, you observe. And to observe means to let go of all control. You are not trying to breathe in a special way. You are not trying to make your breath deep, or slow, or spiritual. You are relinquishing the role of the controller and taking on the role of the silent witness. You simply notice the breath exactly as it is. Is this in-breath long or short? Is this out-breath deep or shallow? Is there a small pause at the top of the inhalation or at the bottom of the exhalation? There is no need to answer these questions with words. You just feel the reality of them. You are becoming an intimate connoisseur of your own life force. Inevitably, your mind will wander. A thought will arise, a sound will be heard, a memory will bubble up, and your attention will leap from the breath and follow it. This is not a mistake. It is not a failure. It is simply the nature of the untrained mind. The practice is not about preventing the mind from wandering. The true practice, the moment of magic, is the instant you realize you have wandered. In that moment of realizing, my mind has drifted, there is no need for scolding or frustration. Instead, you offer a silent, gentle acknowledgement, and then, with the kindness you might use to guide a lost child, you softly escort your attention back to your chosen anchor, back to the feeling of the breath. Each time you do this, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. This return, this gentle, persistent coming back, is the core of the entire practice. Imagine a tightrope walker, poised to cross a great chasm between two cliffs. The destination platform lies ahead, a promise of safety and accomplishment. The vast, empty space of the chasm yawns below, a symbol of all fear, failure, and past regrets. If the tightrope walker stares too intently at the destination, they become filled with craving and impatience. Their desire makes them unsteady, and they risk losing their balance. If they look down into the terrifying abyss, they become paralyzed by fear and anxiety. That vertigo will surely make them fall. The secret of the walker is that they do neither. Their gaze is soft, and their entire world, their entire focus, is on the immediate, tangible reality of the next step. The feeling of the rope beneath their foot, the subtle shift of weight, the gentle extension of their leg, each single step contains the entire journey. Their safety and success lie in their absolute devotion to the present moment. Your breath is that single step. The chasm below is your past and all its sorrows. The platform ahead is the future and all its anxieties and desires. By resting your attention on the full duration of one inhalation and the full duration of one exhalation, you are walking the tightrope of the now. You are maintaining your balance in the only place where life can be lived. The breath becomes your refuge from the vertigo of the mind. It is your constant, faithful companion on the high wire of the present moment. It is vital here to understand a subtle but crucial distinction: the difference between feeling the breath and thinking about the breath. Thinking about the breath is just another layer of mental activity. It sounds like this. Okay, now I am breathing in. This feels good. I should breathe more deeply. Is this a deeper breath than the last one? Oh, my mind is wandering. I am a bad meditator. Let me try again. In, out. This is the narrator, the commentator, and it is just more noise. Feeling the breath, on the other hand, is a direct, raw, non-conceptual experience. It is pre-verbal. It is the pure sensory data of coolness, warmth, expansion, contraction. It is the intimate, physical reality of being alive before the mind has a chance to wrap a story around it. The practice is to notice when you have shifted from feeling to thinking, from direct experience to mental commentary. And when you notice, you once again gently let go of the story, let go of the narrator, and drop your awareness back into the simple, naked sensation of the breath rising and falling. It is a continuous shift from the complexity of the head to the simple truth of the body. This, then, is your anchor. It is always with you, waiting patiently for you to notice it. It costs nothing. It requires no special belief. It is the most democratic and accessible tool for peace on this earth. It is your bridge back to the present, your training ground for attention, your steady point of focus on the tightrope of life. The journey begins here. Be gentle with yourself. Be patient. You are not trying to achieve a perfect, thought-free state. You are simply cultivating a relationship with this moment through the rhythm of your own life force. And now, with our anchor found, with this place of stability to which we can always return, we are ready to do the next part of the work. We are ready to turn our gaze with courage and curiosity toward the storm itself. We can begin to learn how to watch the clouds of thought and emotion as they drift across the vast sky of the mind without being swept away by them. This is the art of non-judgmental observation. Having found our anchor in the steady, rhythmic tide of the breath, we can now begin the real exploration. The purpose of the anchor, after all, is not to stop the ocean from moving, but to hold our vessel steady so that we can observe its vast and ever-changing nature without being swept away. We now have a safe harbor to return to. From this place of stability, we can turn our attention to the mind itself, not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a natural phenomenon to be understood with gentle curiosity. This is the art of non-judgmental observation. The most powerful metaphor for this practice is one of the sky and the clouds. Imagine that your true nature, the fundamental consciousness that is you, is the sky itself. It is vast, open, limitless, and luminous. It has always been here, and it will always be here. It is the space in which everything happens. Your thoughts, your emotions, your moods, your memories, your sensations, these are the clouds. Clouds are, by their very nature, transient. They drift into the sky, take on various shapes and colors, linger for a while, and then, inevitably, they dissolve and drift away. Some clouds are light, white, and wispy, like fleeting, pleasant thoughts. Others are dark, heavy, and ominous, like storm clouds of anger, grief, or anxiety. For our entire lives, we have made a fundamental mistake. When a dark storm cloud appears in the sky of our mind, we point to it and say, "I am that." When a cloud of sadness drifts in, we collapse our entire sense of self into its form and proclaim, "I am sad." When a cloud of anger gathers, we say, "I am angry." We believe we are the weather. We forget that we are the sky. The sky is never harmed by the storm. It is never stained by the darkest cloud. The storm happens within the sky, but it is not the sky itself. The sky simply allows the storm to be, to rage, and to pass, remaining in its own vast, silent, and peaceful nature. The practice of non-judgmental observation is the process of learning to disidentify with the clouds and remember that you are the sky. It is the shift from saying, "I am sad," to recognizing, I am the sky, and a feeling of sadness is passing through me. This simple shift in perspective is the beginning of liberation. It creates a space, a breathing room between you and your experience, and in that space, peace can be found. So, how do we practice this? How do we cultivate this identity as the sky? We use our anchor. As you rest your attention on the breath, you will notice a thought pulling you away. This is a cloud drifting into view. Instead of being immediately carried off by its story, you can employ a gentle and skillful technique called mental noting or labeling. As the thought or feeling is noticed, you give it a soft one-word label silently in your mind. If you find yourself lost in worry about an upcoming meeting, you can gently note worrying, worrying. If a memory of a past holiday arises, you can note remembering, remembering. If you are mentally rehearsing a conversation, planning, planning. If a feeling of irritation bubbles up, anger, anger. The tone of this label is crucial. It is not an accusation. It is not a judgment. It is the light, curious, and dispassionate tone of a scientist observing a natural event. Here is a specimen of worrying. How interesting. The purpose of this labeling is twofold. First, it short-circuits the narrative. The moment you label a thought, you have stepped out of its river. You are no longer being swept away by the story. You are standing on the bank, observing the current. The label brings you back, again and again, to the role of the observer, the sky. Second, it begins to depersonalize the mental event. When you repeatedly label anxiety, you start to see it not as my deep-seated personal problem, but as a recurring pattern of energy in the mind, a familiar type of cloud that tends to show up under certain conditions. It becomes less me and more it. It loses some of its weight and solidity. After you have made the gentle note, you then guide your attention back to the anchor of the breath, back to the feeling of being home in the present moment. You rest there until the next cloud comes along, and you repeat the gentle process. This practice is the primary antidote to a habit that causes us immense suffering, the habit of the second arrow. The Buddha taught that in life, we are often shot by two arrows. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of existence. It is the physical pain of illness or injury, the emotional pain of loss, the arising of a difficult thought or a challenging feeling. These first arrows are a part of life. They cannot always be avoided. The second arrow, however, is the one we shoot at ourselves. It is our reaction to the first arrow. It is the arrow of judgment, resistance, and self-recrimination. For example, the first arrow is a feeling of anxiety arising in your chest. The second arrow is the thought that immediately follows, "Oh no, not this again. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I'm supposed to be calm. What's wrong with me? I'm failing at this." This second arrow is entirely optional, entirely self-inflicted, and it is almost always more painful and more damaging than the first. The art of non-judgmental observation is the art of learning to feel the sting of the first arrow without picking up the bow to shoot the second one. It is the willingness to let the cloud of anxiety be there in the sky, to label it anxiety, without adding the storm of judgment on top of it. There is an old Zen story that illustrates this freedom perfectly. A farmer was in a state of great distress because his only cow had run away. He ran frantically through the village, asking everyone if they had seen it. Finally, he came to the quiet monastery where a Zen master was sitting peacefully with his disciple. The farmer, out of breath and full of panic, rushed up to the master and asked, "Master, have you seen my cow? I am ruined without it." The master looked at the farmer with compassion and simply said, "No, I have not." The farmer, frustrated, ran off to continue his desperate search. Once he was gone, the master turned to his young disciple and, with a gentle smile, remarked, "How lucky we are to have no cow to lose." This story is not about the virtue of being poor. The cow is a symbol. The cow represents anything that we cling to and identify with as mine. It can be a physical object, a reputation, a relationship, but on the subtlest level, the cow represents our thoughts, our opinions, our beliefs, our worries. We fence them in within our minds, we nurture them, we identify with them, and then we live in a constant state of low-grade anxiety that we might lose them or that they might be challenged. My opinion, my sadness, my anxiety, these are our cows. The Zen master is free not because he owns nothing, but because he clings to nothing in his mind. Thoughts and feelings are allowed to wander through the open pasture of his awareness, but none of them are claimed as his cow. He has nothing to defend, and therefore nothing to lose. He is the sky, not the owner of the clouds. When you practice this non-judgmental observation, you begin to experience this freedom for yourself. You begin to realize in your bones that you are not your thoughts. A thought is simply an event in consciousness. It is a flicker of energy, a whisper of language, an image. It is not an order that you must obey. It is not a truth that you must believe. It is not a definitive statement about who you are. The realization creates what has been called a sacred pause, a stimulus hapensa critical comment from someone, a feeling of insecurity, a thought of self-doubt. In the untrained mind, the stimulus and the reaction are fused together into one explosive moment. But with this practice, a space opens up between the stimulus and the response. In that space, you have a choice. You are no longer a slave to your automatic reactions. You can see the cloud of anger rising. Label it anger. Feel it in your body. and choose not to speak from that place of fire. You can see the cloud of insecurity, noted insecurity, and choose not to act from that place of fear. This pause is the birthplace of wisdom, patience, and compassion. We have now used our anchor to steady ourselves, and from that stability, we have learned to watch the weather of our minds to see that we are the sky and not the clouds. We have begun to free ourselves from the tyranny of our own judgments and to loosen our grip on the cows of our thoughts. We have created a space. Now, let us use that space to inquire even more deeply. Let us take one of these thoughts, one of these clouds that we have learned to observe, and put it under a microscope. What is it actually? What is it made of? Where does it come from? And where does it go when it vanishes? We will now move from observing our thoughts to deconstructing the very building blocks of our perceived reality. Having learned to stand on the riverbank of the present moment, anchored by the breath, we have begun to watch the current of our minds without being swept away. We have started to see that we are the vast, silent sky, not the fleeting, transient clouds. This is a profound first step. Now, our curiosity emboldened by this newfound space, we are ready for a deeper investigation. We are going to do something that may seem strange at first. We are going to gently catch one of these thoughts, one of these clouds, and look at it with the focus of a scientist and the heart of a poet. We are going to ask a question of startling simplicity and depth. What exactly is a thought? Let us try this together right now. Simply be aware and wait for the next thought to appear. It does not matter what it is, a memory, a worry, a plan, a judgment. Just notice the very next one that drifts into your awareness. Now, hold it there gently in your attention and let us investigate it. First, where did it come from? Did you decide to think it? Did it knock on a door and announce its arrival before entering? Or did it just appear spontaneously out of a mysterious emptiness? If you are honest in your investigation, you will find it simply materialized from nowhere. It sprung into existence uninvited. Now, let us examine its substance. What is it made of? Look at it closely. Does it have a weight? If you could place it on a scale, what would it register? Does it have a shape, a color, a texture? Is it solid or transparent, hard or soft? If you try to grasp it, to pin it down with your mind, what happens? You will find that it is utterly slippery, like trying to catch a fistful of smoke or hold a sunbeam in your hand. The very act of investigating it reveals its lack of solidity. It has no tangible qualities. It is more like a ghost than a thing. Next, where is this thought located? Can you point to its exact position in space? Is it inside your brain, behind your eyes, floating in front of your face? Is it in the left hemisphere or the right? You will find that you cannot assign it a precise location. It seems to be in your head, but this is just another concept. The thought itself has no address, no zip code. It exists in a space that is not physical space. And finally, watch it as it departs. Where does it go? Does it exit through your ear? Does it dissolve into a million tiny pieces? Or does it, just as it arrived, simply vanish back into the same mysterious emptiness from which it emerged? It leaves no trace, no residue. Through this direct inquiry, we make an astonishing discovery. This thing called a thought, this event that dictates so much of our emotional life, that builds our identity and fuels our suffering, is fundamentally insubstantial. It has no discernible origin, no physical substance, no fixed location, and no final destination. It is, for all intents and purposes, a kind of magical illusion, a flicker, a phantom. So, if thoughts are not solid things, what are they? We can think of them as momentary impulses of energy. They are like sparks firing in the vast, dark space of consciousness. They are brief flashes of language, fleeting images, echoes of sound, fragments of memory. In their raw, natural state, these sparks are completely harmless. They have no inherent power over us. Their power comes from a single, potent source, our belief. A thought without belief is like an ember that lands on a wet stone. It glows for a second and then dies out. A thought that we infuse with our belief is like an ember that lands in a pile of dry hay. It ignites a blaze. We take a neutral, fleeting spark of thought like I might fail in. We pour the gasoline of belief onto it. We link it to other thoughts, creating a chain reaction. I might fail, and if I fail, everyone will think I'm a fraud. And if they think I'm a fraud, I'll lose my job. And if I lose my job, my life will be ruined. The initial harmless spark has now become a raging inferno of anxiety, all because we chose to believe its story. There's a classic teaching story that perfectly illustrates this process. A man walks into his bedroom late at night. The room is dimly lit. As his eyes adjust, he sees a coiled shape in the corner, and the thought instantly arises in his mind. A snake! The moment he believes this thought, his entire reality is transformed. His heart begins to pound. Sweat beads on his forehead. His breath becomes short and ragged. Adrenaline floods his system. He is frozen with terror. This entire, visceral, physiological reality of intense fear is created not by what is actually in the corner, but by his absolute belief in the thought snake. Now, imagine a friend walks into the room and, seeing his terror, calmly flicks on the light switch. The room is flooded with light, and the man can now see clearly that the object in the corner is not a snake at all. It is a coil of rope. In that instant of seeing the truth, what happens to the fear? It vanishes completely. It evaporates on the spot. He did not have to fight the fear, analyze it, or use a special technique to release it. The moment the underlying belief was revealed to be false, the entire emotional and physical reaction that was built upon it collapsed. All our most troublesome thought-sour thoughts of inadequacy, our stories of resentment, our catastrophic worries are precisely like that snake. They are phantoms we create in the dim light of our habitual, uninvestigated awareness. The practice of mindfulness, of looking deeply into the nature of a thought, is the act of turning on the light. We see the terrifying thought for what it is, a harmless, insubstantial coil of mental rope, and in that seeing, we are set free. This investigation also clarifies the distinction we made earlier between the sky and the clouds. The activity of thinking, the endless parade of these energy sparks, these phantompsis, the clouds. But what is it that knows a thought is happening? What is the light that reveals the rope to be a rope? That is awareness. Awareness is the space, the sky, in which the activity of thinking occurs. Awareness itself does not think. It is the silent, motionless knowing that precedes, contains, and outlasts every thought. It is the light of consciousness that illumines the mental objects that pass through it. The fundamental error of our lives is that we have mistaken ourselves for the thinking process, for the clouds. Our spiritual journey is a continuous shifting of our sense of identity, away from the fleeting activity of thought and back to the vast, ever-present, silent awareness that we truly are. This understanding gives us a simple yet profoundly liberating tool. It is the ability to meet any thought with the quiet recognition, this is just a thought. When the thought "I'm not good enough" arises, instead of either believing it and spiraling into sadness or fighting it and creating more tension, we can simply see it and know, this is the not good enough thought. It's just a thought. This phrase is not a form of denial. It is a statement of profound truth. It demotes the thought from its throne as the absolute ruler of our reality and sees it for what it is, a temporary, impersonal, and insubstantial event in the mind. It is the circuit breaker that cuts the power of belief that feeds our suffering. It is the simple, radical act of turning on the light. The realization that our thoughts are so ephemeral, so ghost-like and transient, is the gateway to a much broader and more fundamental insight. For this fleeting quality does not just apply to our thoughts. It applies to everything: our feelings, our moods, our bodily sensations, our relationships, the cells in our body. The stars in the sky. Everything is in a constant state of flux. This universal truth, this fundamental characteristic of all existence, is a cornerstone of Buddhist wisdom. It is called anicca, or impermanence. Having looked closely at a single drop of water, we will now widen our gaze to behold the nature of the entire river. Having seen that a single thought is like a ghost, appearing from nothingness and vanishing without a trace, We now widen our lens. We discovered this fleeting quality by looking at one drop of water. Now, we will lift our gaze to behold the entire river. This transient, insubstantial nature that we found in a thought is not unique to our mental chatter. It is the fundamental, universal law of all existence. It is the truth that everything, without exception, is in a constant state of flux. In the language of the Buddha, this is called anicca, or impermanence. It is the radical recognition that we are living not in a world of solid, separate nouns, but in a universe of dynamic, flowing verbs. Let us contemplate this together. Look at the world around you. The seasons turn, one dissolving into the next in an endless, graceful dance. The mountains that seem so solid and eternal are, over eons, being ground into dust by the patient work of wind and rain. The cities we build, which feel so permanent, will one day crumble. The stars we see in the night sky are echoes of a past light, and many of them have already changed or died. Nothing is static. Everything is a process. Now, bring this contemplation closer to home. Consider your own body. It seems like a solid, continuous thing that you call me, but science tells us it is a whirlwind of activity. Millions of cells are dying and being born in every second. The air you just inhaled is different from the air you will exhale. The food you ate becomes your hair, your skin, your energy. In a very literal sense, you are not the same physical person you were 7 years ago, or even 7 minutes ago. The body is not a fixed entity. It is a river of change, a process, a verb. It is a constant flowing, a sustained miracle of transformation. Consider your feelings and emotions. Recall a moment of profound joy, a time when you felt utterly happy. Where is that feeling now? It came, it filled the sky of your mind, and then it passed. Recall a moment of deep sorrow or heartbreak. It may have felt like it would last forever, a permanent storm that would never cease. But where is it now? Its intensity has faded. It too was a transient weather pattern. Our inner world is just like the outer world, a landscape of shifting climates, where no feeling, no mood ever stays. They arise, they express themselves, and they dissolve. And what of our minds, our personalities, our beliefs? Reflect on the person you were 10 years ago. Did you hold the same opinions, cherish the same dreams, react in the same ways? For most of us, the answer is no. Our minds are just as fluid as our bodies. We learn, we grow, we change our perspectives. The you of today is a different country from the you of yesterday. Everything we identify with as me body, my feelings, my thoughts, my personalities, caught in this relentless, universal river of change. If everything is impermanent, why do we suffer? The teaching of Anicca points to a simple, profound truth. Suffering does not arise from the fact of change itself. Change is neutral. It is simply the nature of reality. Suffering arises from our resistance to change. It is the friction created when our deep-seated desire for permanence collides with the undeniable reality of impermanence. We are like people standing on the bank of a great river, trying to catch the water in our fists. When a pleasant experience comes along, a moment of joy, a loving relationship, a taste of success, we cling to it. We try to freeze it, to build a dam around it, to make it last forever. This very act of clinging creates anxiety, a background hum of fear, because deep down we know it cannot last. And when the river of life inevitably flows on and the moment passes, our fist is empty and we suffer from the loss. Conversely, when an unpleasant experience, a recessa, painful emotion, a difficult life situation, a period of failure, we resist it. We push against it. We try to stop the river from flowing. This resistance creates immense tension and amplifies the pain. We are trying to hold back a wave that is already in motion. Our suffering, then, is a measure of our argument with reality. There is a beautiful story of a great king who, despite all his power and wealth, was troubled by the volatile swings of his own heart. He would be overcome with pride in victory and plunged into despair by defeat. He summoned the wisest craftsperson in his kingdom and gave them a commission. "I want you to make me a ring," he said, "and on this ring I want you to inscribe a message. This message must be so profound that it will offer me solace and perspective in my darkest hour of despair. And yet, it must also serve to ground me and bring me humility in my moment of greatest triumph. The craftsperson went away and contemplated this deep request. Weeks later, they returned and presented the king with a simple, elegant ring. Etched into its surface were 4 simple words: "This too shall pass." The king understood its genius immediately. In times of immense suffering, when his kingdom was threatened or his heart was broken, he would look at the ring, and the message would be a source of profound comfort. This pain, this grief, this failure is not the final word. It is a chapter, not the whole book. It is a storm, not the eternal climate. This too shall pass. It gave him the strength to endure. And in times of glorious victory, when he felt pride swelling in his chest and the adulation of his people washing over him, he would look at the ring. The message would be a gentle, sobering whisper. This glory, this power, this moment of triumph, do not cling to it. Do not let your identity become fused with it. It is also a wave in the great river. This too shall pass. It gave him the humility to remain wise. This teaching is not a call to pessimism or nihilism. It is not meant to drain the color from life. On the contrary, a deep, abiding understanding of impermanence is the secret to profound appreciation. We treasure the cherry blossoms in spring precisely because they are so fleeting. Their transient, ephemeral beauty commands our full attention. If they bloomed all year round, we would soon walk past them without a second glance. In the same way, knowing that this present moment, this conversation, this meal, this quiet breath is utterly unique and will never come again in exactly the same way, imbues it with a sacred, precious quality. Impermanence is a call to awaken from the slumber of our distracted minds and to truly arrive in our lives. It invites us to savor the warmth of the sun on our skin, the taste of our food, the presence of a loved one, because this moment is all we ever truly have. This understanding is also a key that unlocks the prisons of our past and our future. When we truly see the river of change, we realize that the person who made that mistake we regret so much 10 years ago is gone. They are no more. Every cell of their body has been replaced. Their mind was different. To remain chained to their actions is to be haunted by a ghost. Impermanence allows for genuine forgiveness and the possibility of a fresh start in every moment. And when we are faced with present pain, the wisdom of the King's Ring is our greatest ally. When a wave of anxiety or sadness arises, instead of contracting around it with the terrifying thought, "This will last forever," we can meet it with a spacious and compassionate mind, knowing, "This feeling is here now. I will let it be. It is a cloud, it is a wave, and this too shall pass." We have now seen that everything we can perceive, from the thoughts in our mind to the stars in the sky, is caught in this beautiful, relentless flow of change. Nothing is solid, nothing is permanent. This leads us to the most radical and liberating inquiry of all. If every component part of what we call body, my feelings, my thoughts, is impermanent, what does that say about the me they supposedly constitute? If we look for a permanent, unchanging self, a solid entity at the center of this hurricane of change, what do we actually find? This question takes us beyond the observation of change and into the very heart of our identity, to the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or no self. We have stood together by the banks of a great river and acknowledged a fundamental truth. Everything flows. The world, our bodies, our feelings, and our thoughts are all caught in a relentless current of change, a universal law known as impermanence. This realization naturally brings us to the most intimate and radical question of all. If everything is changing, who is the one watching this change? We all carry a deep, intuitive sense of being a continuous self. There is a feeling of an I that was there in our childhood photos, that experienced our teenage years, and that is here now, listening to these words. We feel like a solid, stable entity inhabiting a changing body, a permanent presence at the center of our own universe. The Buddha invites us to investigate this feeling, not to accept it at face value. This inquiry leads us to the most liberating and perhaps most misunderstood of all his teachings. Anatta, often translated as no, self. This does not mean that you do not exist. You are clearly here, listening to these words. Anatta does not deny your existence. It challenges your assumption about the nature of that existence. It suggests that if we search for a separate, solid, continuous self, a little person or CEO sitting in the control room of our mind, we will not be able to find one. There is a famous dialogue from the ancient Buddhist texts that beautifully illustrates this. A Greek king in India, Milinda, who was a sincere seeker of truth, approached a wise Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king asked for the sage's name. Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a name, a convenient designation. He explained that there was no permanent person to be found corresponding to the name. The king, a practical and logical man, was baffled. He pointed to Nagasena's chariot and asked, "And what is this chariot? Is the pole the chariot? Are the wheels the chariot? Is the axle, the frame, or the reins the chariot?" Nagasena, in turn, said no to each question. Then the king challenged, "Is the chariot something other than these parts?" Nagasena again said no. The king, triumphant, declared, "Then, venerable sir, you are speaking a falsehood. There is no chariot." But Nagasena calmly replied, "Your Majesty, it is on account of the pole, the axle, the wheels, the frame, and all the other parts that this is given the convenient designation, the name, chariot. It is a conceptual label for a functioning assembly." He then turned the inquiry back on the king himself. "What we call a self," he explained, "is exactly like the chariot. It is a convenient name we give to a collection of changing parts and processes. When we look for the actual thing itself, separate from its components, it cannot be found. So what are these components that make up the chariot of the self? The Buddhist teachings group them into 5 categories, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. These are the parts that make up our chariot. The first is form, our physical body with all its senses. This is the vehicle. Is this body the real you? We have already seen that it is in a constant state of flux, a river of changing cells. It gets sick, it ages, it is impermanent, so it cannot be the permanent, unchanging you. Second, there are feelings, the constant stream of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations that arise from contact with the world. A pleasant taste, the pain of a headache, the neutral feeling of your back against a chair. Are you your feelings? Clearly not, for they are as fleeting as the weather, changing from one moment to the next. Third, there are perceptions, the faculty that recognizes and labels sensory input. It sees blue, it hears loud, it feels soft, it identifies things. Are you your perceptions? No, because they are completely dependent on what you are sensing. Without something to see, there is no seeing. Fourth, there are mental formations. This is the largest and most complex category. It includes all our habits, our biases, our opinions, our beliefs, our desires, our intentions, and our volitions. It is the chattering monkey mind, the inner narrator, the part of us that plans and worries and judges. This is the part we most often identify with as me. But if we look closely, we see that these are just conditioned patterns, learned responses, and mental habits. They are not a unified, singular commander. They are more like a committee of voices, often arguing with each other. They are processes, not an entity. Fifth, there is consciousness, the fundamental knowing quality, the raw awareness that is aware of the other 4 aggregates. There is consciousness of form, seeing, consciousness of feeling, feeling pain, consciousness of thought, knowing a thought is present. But is this awareness you? If you look closely, you will find that consciousness never exists on its own. It is always consciousness of something. It is dependent on an object. When we look at ourselves in this way, we see that what we call a self is a verb, not a noun. It is a dynamic, interdependent process of these 5 changing aggregates. It is a symphony, But when you search for the symphony separate from the musicians and their instruments and the sound they are making, you find nothing. You are the happening, not a thing that it is happening to. There is no little driver in the chariot. The chariot is driving itself. You can verify this for yourself. Take a moment and try to find this self. When a thought arises, ask, who is thinking this? When a feeling is felt, ask, who is feeling this? Look for the owner, the center point, the I that is behind your experiences. The search is like peeling an onion. You peel back one layer of the body, then the next feelings, then perceptions, then mental formations, then even consciousness itself. You keep peeling, looking for the solid core, the essence of the onion, but when you have peeled away the very last translucent layer, you are left with nothing. The onion was the layers. The self is the process. To the part of us that wants to be solid and important and permanent, this idea can sound terrifying. It can feel like annihilation. But this is a misunderstanding. The teaching of anatta is considered the ultimate good news, because the self that we are so desperately trying to protect is the very source of our suffering. This separate self is a heavy burden. It is a full-time, exhausting job to maintain it. We have to constantly polish its reputation, defend its opinions, worry about its future, nurse its past wounds, and feel terribly hurt when it is insulted or ignored. It is a fragile construction, and we live in constant, low-grade fear that it will be threatened. The realization of anatta is the dropping of this immense burden. When you see, even for a moment, that there is no solid, separate self, a profound liberation occurs. If there is no fixed entity to defend, who is there to be personally offended by a criticism? The words are simply sound waves, interpreted by a conditioned mind. The sting of personal insult loses its poison. If there is no permanent self to aggrandize, who is there to be puffed up with pride? Success is seen for what it is, the coming together of countless causes and conditions, not the heroic achievement of a solitary me. And if there is no central self to constantly worry about, we can meet life with an incredible sense of openness and freedom. We are no longer a noun that must be protected, but a verb that is free to flow and respond to life as it unfolds. This does not lead to passivity. It leads to a more spontaneous, intelligent, and compassionate way of being, unhindered by the anxieties of the ego. We have now journeyed through the understanding that all things are impermanent, anicca, and that there is no solid, unchanging self to be found within this flow, anatta. These are the first two of what are called the three marks of existence. They are the great truths that, once seen, illuminate the third. Now that we understand that we are a changing process and that there is no fixed self to cling to or to satisfy, we can finally understand the true source of our deep, restless dissatisfaction. We are now ready to look directly into the heart of our suffering, at the subtle, pervasive thirst known as dukkha. Having journeyed into the universal reality of impermanence, anicca, and the profound insight of no self, anatta, we arrive at a critical juncture. These two great truths are not abstract philosophies to be admired from a distance. They are the diagnostic tools that allow us to understand the core human condition, the very first teaching the Buddha gave after his enlightenment. This teaching addresses the fundamental feeling that motivates every spiritual search, the subtle, pervasive sense of dissatisfaction that runs like a thread through our lives. The Pali word for this is dukkha. This word, dukkha, is often translated into English as suffering, but that single word is too heavy, too tragic. It fails to capture the subtlety and breadth of the original meaning. While dukkha certainly includes the great sorrows of life grief, loss, and pain, its true scope is far wider. A better way to understand dukkha is as a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, a persistent sense of not quite rightness. Imagine driving a magnificent car on a perfectly smooth road, but one of the wheels is slightly off-center on its axle. No matter how smooth the road, there is a constant, low-grade vibration, a subtle wobble that prevents the ride from ever being truly peaceful. That wobble is dukkha. Imagine wearing a beautiful, comfortable pair of shoes, but there is a single tiny pebble lodged deep inside. It doesn't cause agonizing pain, but it produces a constant background irritation that you can never fully ignore. That pebble is dukkha. It is the background static of stress, the feeling of incompleteness, the vague but persistent sense that something is missing or something is wrong, even in our moments of happiness. Where does this pervasive dissatisfaction come from? It arises directly from the friction between our deepest desires and the unchangeable nature of reality we have just explored. Dukkha is the chafe created by our mind rubbing against the grain of the universe. Our mind, conditioned for security, desperately wants permanence in a world that is fundamentally impermanent. We want to build our house on solid rock, but we find ourselves living in a flowing river. Our mind, conditioned to feel like a solid, separate self, desperately wants to feel important, in control, and secure, in a reality where only a selfless, interdependent process can be found. Dukkha is the name for the stress generated by this fundamental mismatch. It is the inevitable result of looking for things that cannot be found permanence, and a separate self in the one place they can never exist, the conditioned world. To understand this more deeply, the teachings break dukkha down into three distinct types. The first is the most obvious, dukkha, or the dukkha of pain. This is suffering in the ordinary sense of the word. It is the pain of a migraine headache, the sting of a harsh criticism, the grief of losing a loved one, the anxiety of a financial crisis. It is the first arrow we spoke of earlier, the unavoidable pains and sorrows that are a natural part of being a sentient creature. This form of dukkha is easy for everyone to recognize. The second type is more subtle and surprising, viparinama dukkha, or the dukkha of change. This is the dissatisfaction that is secretly embedded within our pleasant experiences. This is a profound paradox. How can happiness be a form of suffering? The suffering lies not in the happy moment itself, but in its impermanent nature. When you are experiencing a moment of great joy watching, a breathtaking sunset, being in the arms of someone you love, achieving a long-sought goal, there is often a subtle, subconscious tension. It is the quiet knowledge that this will not last. This moment is passing, even as it is happening. The higher we fly on the wings of pleasure, the more we are aware of the long drop back to earth. Our clinging to the pleasant experience, our desperate wish for it to continue forever, creates an anxiety that taints the sweetness of the moment itself. The happiness contains the seed of future sorrow because we know it is a fleeting wave in the river of anicca. The third and most profound type is sankhara dukkha, or the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the deepest and most pervasive form of unsatisfactoriness. It is the background wobble of the off-center wheel. It comes from the simple fact of being a conditioned thing, a chariot made of parts, a self that is just a bundle of the five impermanent aggregates. Because our very existence is composite, dependent, and in constant flux, there is an inherent unreliability and intrinsic vulnerability to our being. We are never truly in control. We are susceptible to sickness, to old age, to the changing opinions of others, to the arising of thoughts and feelings we did not choose. This is not a tragic flaw. It is simply the nature of being a process rather than a solid entity. This background dukkha is the subtle stress of having to maintain this fragile assembly, of being a wave that must constantly expend energy to hold its form before it inevitably dissolves back into the ocean. There is a famous story that illustrates the Buddha's intensely practical and urgent approach to dealing with dukkha. A man was shot by an arrow dipped in poison. His friends and family rushed to his side to pull it out and treat the wound, but the man stopped them. "Wait," he commanded. "Before you pull out this arrow, I insist on knowing the name of the man who shot me. To what clan did he belong? Was he tall or short, dark or fair? What kind of wood was the bow made from? What kind of bird did the feathers on the arrow's shaft come from?" The Buddha pointed out that this foolish man would surely die from the poison long before he ever received the answers to his questions. The poisoned arrow is dukkha. It is our fundamental state of dissatisfaction. The man's endless questions are our tendency to get lost in metaphysical speculation. Why is there suffering in the world? Who created the universe? What is the ultimate meaning of it all? The Buddha's path is not concerned with providing answers to these speculative questions. His focus is radically pragmatic. It is about one thing and one thing only, showing us how to pull out the arrow. To do this, the very first step is to acknowledge that the arrow is there. This is the meaning of the first noble truth, the truth that there is dukkha. This is not a pessimistic, life-denying statement. It is a courageous and realistic diagnosis. It is like a skilled doctor who must first identify the illness before they can prescribe a cure. To deny the illness, to pretend the symptoms are not there, only allows the disease to fester. The first noble truth is a moment of profound validation. It is the universe saying, that subtle feeling of stress you carry, that sense that something is not quite right, you are not crazy. It is real. It is the shared condition of all beings caught in the cycle of grasping. And because it can be seen and understood, it can be healed. Having now diagnosed the condition, having looked squarely at the arrow of dukkha, we turn from the problem to the path of healing. We are equipped with the foundational wisdom of impermanence and no self. We understand the precise nature of our discontent. The next step is to move beyond intellectual knowledge and into the direct experience that leads to the arrow's removal. This practice takes us to the very source of the mind's agitation, to the quiet, fertile ground from which all thoughts arise. We are now ready to search for the sacred space that exists in the gap between our thoughts. Having diagnosed the fundamental condition of our discontent, dukkha, and having seen how it is born from our struggle with the realities of impermanence and no self, we now turn from diagnosis to the path of healing. We have examined the poisoned arrow, we have understood its nature. Now we learn how to gently and skillfully remove it. The path to this freedom does not lie in accumulating more knowledge, more beliefs, or more complex philosophies. It does not lie in thinking our way out of the problem of thought. The path lies in the opposite direction. It lies in discovering what is already present in our minds when thought is momentarily absent. It is a journey into the silent, fertile space that exists between our thoughts. We imagine our mind to be a constant, roaring waterfall of noise, a relentless inner monologue that never ceases. We believe that silence is something we must create, something we must achieve through great effort, like building a dam to stop the waterfall. But this is a misunderstanding that creates immense struggle. The truth is that silence is not something we need to build. It is something we need to notice. The mind's natural state, its fundamental ground, is not noise, but a deep, abiding silence. Thoughts are temporary events, disturbances that arise out of the silence and dissolve back into it. The silence is the canvas. Thoughts are just fleeting brushstrokes. It is always here, just overlooked. We can find this silence in the infinitesimally small pause that exists in the space between the end of one thought and the beginning of the next. Just as the silence between musical notes is what gives the melody its rhythm and power, the silence between our thoughts is what gives our mind its potential for peace and clarity. Our mission, then, is not to fight the thoughts, but to listen intently for the silence that cradles them. How do we do this? We will now explore a practice that is both simple and profound. It is the practice of watching for the next thought. Begin by finding a comfortable and dignified posture, the same way we did when we learned to anchor ourselves with the breath. Allow your body to settle. Take a few conscious breaths, feeling the air move in and out, and let the initial waves of tension in your body and mind begin to calm. Now, we will gently shift our intention. While the breath remains a quiet anchor in the background, your primary interest, your primary focus, is now going to be the arising of your very next thought. You are going to wait for it, but this is a very special kind of waiting. It is not the tense, impatient waiting you might experience when you are late for an appointment. It is not the dull, sleepy waiting you might feel in a long line. It is a relaxed, yet highly alert, state of anticipation. The best image for this is a cat waiting patiently by a mouse hole. The cat is perfectly still, its body completely relaxed. It is not straining or stressed, yet it is 100% alert. Every fiber of its being is awake, ready, and listening. This is the quality of awareness we are cultivating. You are simply sitting in the quiet alertness of your own being. waiting to see what the mind will do next. You are waiting for the next thought to appear. What happens when you assume this posture of alert waiting? A remarkable shift occurs. Because you are watching for a thought, you are not in the thought. You are not lost in its story. You have already created a space of separation. You are positioned as the observer, the witness. You are the cat at the mouse hole, not the mouse. And in this heightened state of quiet awareness, you may begin to notice something incredible. You may notice the moment before the thought fully forms. You may perceive a flicker, a stirring, a subtle impulse. And just before that, you may perceive the silence itself, a brief, thought-free moment of pure awareness. This is the gap. At first, this experience may be fleeting. The gap may seem to be only a microsecond long, or you may find that thoughts still ambush you, appearing seemingly out of nowhere, fully formed. This is perfectly normal and to be expected. Do not be discouraged. The point of the practice is not to succeed in finding long, blissful gaps. The practice is the act of repeatedly and gently returning to that state of relaxed, alert waiting. Every time you realize you have been carried away by a thought and you return to the posture of the cat at the mouse hole, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are valuing silence over noise. Imagine you are lying in a field at night looking up at the sky. At first glance, your attention is immediately captured by the brightest objects, the full moon, Venus, the most brilliant stars. These are like our big, loud, emotionally charged, thought-sour worries, our plans, our resentments. They dominate the mental landscape, and we might easily believe that the sky consists only of these dramatic points of light. But if you continue to gaze, if you soften your focus and allow your eyes to relax, your perception begins to change. You start to see the thousands of fainter stars. More importantly, you start to become aware of the vast, silent, deep blackness between the stars. You begin to realize that the space, the emptiness, is not just a void. It is the very fabric of the night. It is the context in which the stars appear. You realize that the silence of space is infinitely more vast than the light of the stars it contains. The practice of watching for the next thought is just like this. At first, you only notice the bright stars of your most powerful thoughts. But as you continue to sit with this patient, open awareness, you start to perceive what is between them. You notice the silence. You realize that this silence is not an absence but a presence. It is the vast silent background of the mind itself, the context for all mental activity. And you begin to understand that your true nature is not the fleeting star, but the vast eternal sky. With consistent practice, your ability to notice and rest in this gap will naturally deepen. The gaps may seem to become longer, not because you are forcefully creating them, but because your perception has become more subtle and refined, allowing you to recognize and abide in the silence that was always there. You will discover that this silence is not a dull, lifeless emptiness. It is vibrant. It is peaceful. It is filled with a silent, knowing presence. It is a state of pure being before the mind divides the world into subjects and objects, before it creates the story of me and my problems. It is a return to your own original, uncomplicated nature. When a thought does inevitably arise, as it will, there is no sense of failure. You simply notice it. You can even silently acknowledge it, as if to say, "Ah, there you are." And then, without getting caught in its story, you let it go and immediately return your attention to waiting for the next one. The goal is not to achieve a state of no thoughts. It is to become so intimate with the silence that the arising of a thought is no longer a major disturbance. It is simply a small cloud passing through your vast open sky. This silent gap we have been exploring is not just a momentary pause or a blank state. It is charged with a quiet, knowing potentiality. It is the doorway to understanding our most fundamental nature. What is this silent intelligence that exists when thought is absent? What is the nature of the sky itself, and not just the empty spaces between the clouds? This inquiry leads us to our next exploration, the nature of awareness itself, the silent, ever-present witness of all our experience. We have discovered the gap between our thoughts, that silent, sacred pause that is the source from which all mental activity arises and to which it returns. We have felt its presence, its stillness. But this gap is not a void. It is not a state of non-existence. It is filled with a silent, knowing quality. This leads us to a most essential question. What is this silent, knowing presence that exists when thought is absent? What is the nature of the space itself, the very ground of our being? This is an inquiry into what we can call pure awareness. Let us return to our metaphor of the sky and the clouds. We have learned to identify as the sky rather than the fleeting weather patterns that pass through it. Now, let us examine the nature of the sky itself. The sky is fundamentally spacious and open. It allows all weather to happen within it. It allows for brilliant sunshine, gentle clouds, dark storms, and fierce winds. The sky does not cling to the beautiful sunset, pleading with it to stay. Nor does it push away the frightening thunderstorm, trying to force it to leave. It holds all of it in a vast, non-judgmental embrace. Most importantly, the sky itself is never changed, harmed, or stained by the weather that occurs within it. After the most violent storm has passed, the sky is just as pure and clear as it was before. This is the nature of awareness. It is the vast, open, changeless space of knowing in which the entire weather pattern of your life, all your thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions takes place. You are not the transient weather. You are the eternal sky. Perhaps an even more precise metaphor is that of a mirror. Imagine a perfect, flawless mirror hanging on a wall. It reflects everything that passes before it, perfectly and without discrimination. It reflects a beautiful, smiling face. It reflects a sad, crying face. It reflects a scene of serene nature. It reflects an image of violence and chaos. The mirror receives all of these images equally. It does not prefer the beautiful face over the ugly one. It does not try to hold on to the image of the sunrise or push away the image of a garbage truck. It simply reflects what is, without judgment, without resistance. Now, here is the crucial insight. The mirror itself is never affected by what it reflects. The reflection of a fire does not burn the mirror. The reflection of water does not make the mirror wet. The reflection of mud does not stain the mirror's surface. When the images are gone, the mirror remains exactly as it was, clear, pristine, and empty of content. Its own nature is untouched. This is a perfect description of pure awareness. Awareness is the mirror of your mind. It faithfully reflects every experience you have. It knows joy, it knows sorrow, it knows anger, it knows peace. It knows the sound of music and the feeling of pain. But the awareness that knows these things is not itself joyful, sorrowful, angry, or peaceful. The knowing of pain is not painful. The knowing of sound is not sound. Awareness is the clear, silent, knowing capacity that allows all experience to be registered, but it is never defined or damaged by any experience. To use one more analogy, think of your life as a movie being projected onto a screen. The movie can be a comedy, a romance, a drama, a tragedy. The images on the screen are constantly changing, full of color, action, and sound. As viewers, we are typically completely absorbed in the story. We laugh with the characters. We cry at their misfortunes. We feel suspense and fear. We forget that we are watching a movie. We identify with the plot. The spiritual path is the process of realizing that our true nature is not a character in the movie, but the screen itself. The screen allows the entire drama to unfold upon it. It provides the space for every scene, every emotion, every event. But the screen is never actually altered by the movie. It is not made happy by the happy ending, nor is it truly harmed by the scenes of battle. When the movie is over and the projector is turned off, the screen remains what it has always been: white, empty, spacious, and pristine. You are not the story. You are the screen upon which the story of your life is playing. Hearing this, the mind might immediately create a new project for itself. Okay, I need to become awareness. I must achieve this state. This is a subtle trap. It is crucial to understand that awareness is not something you need to create, achieve, or attain. It is not a special state reserved for spiritual masters. It is the most ordinary, fundamental, and ever-present reality of your existence. The very fact that you are conscious right now, the fact that you can hear these words, feel the contact of your body with the surface beneath you, and know that you are alive, is the undeniable proof of awareness. Awareness is the amness of your being, the simple fact of existence that precedes all thought and all labels. The problem has never been a lack of awareness. The problem has been a case of mistaken identity. We have been so hypnotized by the ceaseless drama of the contents of our mind, the reflections in the mirror, the movie on the screen, that we have completely overlooked the mirror, the screen itself. We have forgotten what we are. The practice of meditation, therefore, is not a struggle to become aware. It is the gentle practice of abiding as the awareness you already are. It is a process of letting go of your lifelong fascination with the clouds and relaxing into your natural, spacious identity as the sky. How do we do this in a practical way? It is a practice of shifting focus. Right now, become aware of the sounds around you. The sound of a voice, the hum of a machine, a distant noise. Notice how these sounds appear in your awareness. Stay for a moment and then disappear. Now, can you shift your attention from the sounds themselves to the silent, knowing space that is hearing the sounds? Can you become interested in the field of silence out of which the sounds arise and into which they dissolve? That silent, receptive field is awareness. Let's try it with a physical sensation. Bring your attention to the feeling of your hands. You may feel warmth, tingling, pressure. Now, can you sense the aware, knowing space in which the feeling of your hands is appearing? That space is not itself warm or tingling. It is simply that which knows the sensation. Finally, do it with a thought. Allow a thought to arise. Notice its content. Now, see if you can sense the silent, spacious background that is aware of the thought. This background is not itself thinking. It is not caught up in the thought's story. It is the silent witness. Resting as awareness is this simple, effortless shift. It is the letting go of the tight focus on the objects of experience, the sounds, the sensations, the thoughts, and relaxing into the vast, open, silent subject. There is nothing to do, nothing to accomplish. It is a non-doing. It is a return to the ground of your being. It is the end of the exhausting struggle of the self to manage its experiences, and the beginning of a deep and abiding peace that comes from knowing what you truly are. When we begin to stabilize our sense of self here in this vast, impersonal awareness, rather than in the small, fragile, and demanding ego, our entire relationship to the world and its events begins to transform. An insult that would have once felt like a dagger to the heart is now seen as just an unpleasant reflection passing through the untarnishable mirror. A failure that would have once defined our self-worth is now seen as just a dark cloud moving through the ever-present sky. This shift has profound implications for how we navigate the challenges of human relationship, particularly conflict, blame, and the actions of others. It is a truth that is beautifully captured in the ancient Taoist parable of the empty boat. As we learn to rest in the vast open sky of awareness, we begin to realize that our true nature is like a mirror, untouched and unstained by the reflections that pass through it. This is a profound and peaceful realization when we are sitting in quiet contemplation. But how does this insight function in the messy, unpredictable, and often difficult world of human relationships? How do we remain as the sky when someone else's storm cloud drifts into our space? The answer lies in one of the most practical and transformative teachings from the East, a simple story known as the parable of the empty boat. The story, from the writings of the great Taoist sage Zhuangzi, goes like this. Imagine you are in a small boat, gently rowing across a placid lake on a misty morning. You are at peace, enjoying the quiet solitude. Suddenly, out of the mist, another boat collides with yours, a jarring bump that shatters the tranquility. Your first reaction is a flash of anger. You look up, ready to shout at the careless person who hit you, but as you look, you see that the other boat is empty. It has simply come untied from its moorings and has been drifting aimlessly on the current. What happens to your anger? In an instant, it vanishes. It has nowhere to land. You might feel a flicker of annoyance at the situation, but there is no one to blame. You simply push the empty boat away with your oar and continue on your journey. Your peace, though momentarily disturbed, quickly returns. Now, Zhuangzi asks us to imagine the very same scene again, the same boat, the same lake, the same jarring collision, but this time when you look up, you see a man standing in the other boat. What happens now? The flash of annoyance instantly explodes into rage. You shout, "Watch where you are going! Are you a fool? Are you blind?" Your heart pounds, your face flushes with anger, and your entire morning of peace is utterly destroyed. You may carry that resentment with you for the rest of the day. The parable invites us to contemplate a simple question: what is the difference between these two scenarios? The event itself, the physical collision, is identical. The only difference is the presence, or the perceived presence, of another self. Your anger was not truly caused by the bump of the boat. It was caused by the story your mind created about a separate, intentional person who had wronged you. The anger needs a target. It needs someone to blame. When the boat is empty, the anger is baseless. It dissolves. This story is a profound teaching on the nature of anger, blame, and forgiveness. The wisdom of anatta, or no self, is the realization that, in a fundamental sense, all boats are empty. When another person says or does something that harms you, when they cut you off in traffic, speak a harsh word, or act with thoughtless inconsideration their boat bumps into yours, our habitual reaction is to immediately see a malicious, competent, and fully conscious pilot in that boat, and to direct our outrage at them. The practice of the empty boat is the conscious choice to see otherwise. It is the wisdom to understand that the person in the other boat is not a solid, independent entity acting with pure, evil intent. They are, like all of us, a complex assembly of causes and conditions. Their boat is being tossed about by currents they themselves may not even understand. The currents of their upbringing, their hidden fears, their insecurities, their physical pain, the bad news they just received, their own unexamined suffering. Their hurtful action is not a personal arrow shot from a master archer. It is a symptom of their own dukkha, a stray arrow shot by a blind man. Their boat is not piloted by a villain. It is adrift. Seeing the world in this way does not mean we become passive doormats. This is not a call to allow ourselves to be harmed or to condone destructive behavior. You still have to deal with the situation. You still push the other boat away to prevent it from damaging yours further. You may need to row to a different part of the lake. You may need to speak firmly to the person to establish a boundary. The wisdom of the empty boat does not change what you do. It changes the inner place from which you do it. When you react from the belief that there is a solid you who has been personally attacked by a solid them, your actions are fueled by the hot, blinding energy of the ego: anger, revenge, resentment, and self-pity. These reactive states cloud your judgment and almost always escalate the conflict, creating a vicious cycle of retaliation. The other person feeling your anger feels their own boat has been bumped, and they shout back. This is the story of most human conflict, from small family arguments to global wars. It is a chain reaction of egos feeling wounded and bumping back endlessly. When you respond from the wisdom of the empty boat, you see the situation with a cool clarity because you are not taking it personally. You are not blinded by the fog of your own wounded ego. You can assess the situation clearly and choose the most skillful, intelligent, and even compassionate response. Your action is no longer a hot, messy reaction. It is a cool, wise response. You break the cycle of retaliation. By refusing to offer your ego as a target, you become a force for peace, both within yourself and in the world. You absorb the impact without creating a new one. This is a practice you can bring into your life immediately. The next time you feel that familiar, bumpa critical email, a dismissive tone of voice, someone taking credit for your work, try this. First, just notice the raw impact in your body. the tightening in your stomach, the heat rising in your face. This is the collision. Second, notice the story that your mind instantly generates. The story will always be about me and them. How dare they say that to me? Recognize this story for what it is, the illusion of the man in the boat. Third, intentionally and consciously, picture the other person's boat as empty. See them not as a malicious agent, but as a product of countless conditions, adrift on the currents of their own suffering. This does not excuse their behavior, but it depersonalizes it. It takes the venom out of the sting. Finally, from this new, more spacious perspective, ask yourself, what is the wisest and most compassionate way to handle this situation now? The answer that arises from this space will be vastly different and far more effective than the one that comes from pure, blind reaction. The parable of the empty boat is a powerful tool for living the insights of anatta and awareness in our day-to-day lives. It is a method for dissolving anger at its root, not by suppressing it, but by removing its fuel, the deeply held belief in a separate I that needs to be defended at all costs. This wisdom helps us navigate the collisions we receive from the world outside. But what about the currents that drive our own boat? What are the inner forces that propel us toward things we desire and push us away from things we fear? To understand this, we must turn our gaze inward again and examine the two great engines of the ego, the engine of craving and the engine of aversion. We must now explore the fundamental nature of attachment and hatred. The wisdom of the empty boat provides us with a profound tool for navigating our interactions with the world. It teaches us to depersonalize the bumps and collisions we receive from others, seeing their actions not as personal attacks, but as the result of impersonal currents. This brings a great peace. But now, we must turn this inquiry inward and examine the engine of our own vessel. What are the powerful, often invisible forces that propel our own boat, causing us to lurch desperately towards certain experiences and recoil violently from others? To understand the root of our own reactivity, we must look directly at the twin engines that power the journey of the ego. These are the powerful forces of attachment and aversion. Let us first examine attachment. The Pali word for this is tanha, which translates more accurately as thirst or craving. It is the deep magnetic pull we feel toward anything we perceive as pleasant. It is the mind's constant reaching, grasping, and clinging. This thirst manifests in many forms. There is the obvious craving for sense pleasures, the taste of delicious food, the feeling of physical comfort, the sound of beautiful music, the sight of a desirable body. We chase after these fleeting sensations, believing that if we can just arrange them perfectly, we will find lasting happiness. There is also a more subtle craving for existence, for becoming. This is the ego's ambition, the desire to be successful, to be famous, to be respected, to be seen as intelligent or spiritual. It is the endless project of self-improvement that is always seeking a future, better version of ourselves, never content with who we are right now. This constant state of thirst is a primary source of our dukkha. The suffering it creates is twofold. First, there is the pain of not having what we want. When we crave something and cannot attain it, we experience frustration, envy, a sense of lack, and restlessness. Our mind is fixated on what is missing, and so we cannot be at peace with what is present. Second, and perhaps more subtly, there is the pain that comes from getting what we want. When we finally achieve the success, acquire the possession, or experience the pleasure we were craving, the moment of satisfaction is inevitably brief. It is a wave that quickly crests and begins to recede. And in its place, a new form of suffering arises, the anxiety of potential loss. We now have to protect our possession, defend our status, and worry about how to get that pleasure again when it fades. The thirst is momentarily quenched, but the underlying state of anxiety remains and may even intensify. We become nervous, guardians of our own fleeting happiness. The second engine is aversion, or dosa. This is the equal and opposite force to attachment. It is the violent push away from anything we perceive as unpleasant, painful, or threatening to the ego. If attachment is the magnet's pull, aversion is its powerful repulsion. We feel aversion to physical pain, to uncomfortable emotions like fear, shame, or loneliness. We feel aversion to people who criticize us, to situations that challenge our sense of control, to ideas that contradict our cherished beliefs. Our life becomes a constant effort to insulate ourselves from these unpleasant experiences, to build walls and push away anything that we do not like. This constant pushing is also a profound source of suffering. The act of resistance itself creates tension and struggle. It is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It requires an immense and continuous expenditure of energy. The more we hate and fight against an unpleasant reality, the more power we give it over our inner state. We amplify the pain of the first arrow by shooting ourselves repeatedly with the second arrow of resistance. By constantly fighting what is, we exhaust ourselves and fill our minds with the toxic energies of hatred, resentment, and bitterness. We are at war with reality, a war we can never win. There is a powerful ancient story that perfectly illustrates how these two forces, attachment and aversion, work in tandem to create a prison from which we cannot escape. A hunter wishes to catch a clever monkey. Instead of chasing it, he devises a simple trap. He takes a coconut, makes a hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through, and places a sweet, desirable piece of fruit inside. He then secures the coconut to the base of a tree. Soon, the monkey comes along. It smells the sweet fruit, and the engine of attachment, tanha, roars to life. Its desire is hooked. It slides its open hand into the coconut and grasps the delicious prize. But now, with its fist clenched around the fruit, its hand is too large to pull out of the hole. The monkey is trapped. At this point, it has a simple choice. It could just let go of the fruit, open its hand, and be free. But its desire, its attachment, is too strong. It cannot bear the thought of letting go of what it wants. Now, the second engine, aversion, dosa, kicks in. The monkey becomes frustrated and enraged by its predicament. It hates the feeling of being stuck. It pulls and thrashes, trying to free itself by force, but this only makes its wrists sore and raw. In its anger, it grabs the coconut with its other hand, trying to smash it, but the hunter has coated the outside of the coconut with a sticky sap, and now its other hand is stuck fast. Consumed by a blind fury of hatred and resistance, the monkey uses its feet and its mouth, trying to bite and kick its way free, only to become more and more hopelessly entangled. When the hunter returns, he finds the monkey utterly exhausted and completely ensnared, not by the hunter's strength, but by its own mind. We are that monkey. The sweet fruit is any object of our desire, a pleasure, a status, an idea. Our initial clinging, born of attachment, is what first creates the trap. Then, our struggle against the reality of the situation, born of aversion, is what tightens the trap and makes our suffering acute. At any moment, we have the choice to be free. The choice is to simply open the hand to let go. Attachment and aversion are not two separate problems. They are two faces of a single underlying energy. That energy is the ego's desperate attempt to control reality, to impose its preferences on the world. It is the voice of the separate self that says, "I want this, and I will not accept that." Both are born from a fundamental misunderstanding of the world, a forgetting of anicca and anatta. Both are attempts to find permanent security for a non-existent self in a world that is inherently fluid and changing. You cannot have one without the other. The more you desperately cling to pleasure, the more you will violently recoil from pain. They are the two poles of a single magnet, the ceaseless oscillation that defines the life of the ego and perpetuates the subtle wobble of dukkha. The way out of this trap is not to find a better fruit to grasp, nor is it to develop stronger muscles to fight the trap. The way out is the Buddha's middle path. This is the path of wisdom that walks between the extremes of attachment and aversion. It is not a path of passionless indifference. It is a path of profound allowing. It is the wisdom to fully experience the sweetness of pleasure without clinging to it, to savor the warmth of the sun on your skin without falling into despair when a cloud passes. And it is the wisdom to fully experience the bitterness of pain without resisting it, to feel the coldness of the rain without the added tension of hatred. It is the wisdom of the mirror, which reflects both beauty and ugliness without being changed by either. It is the wisdom of the monkey learning, at last, to simply open its hand. This act of letting go, of unclenching the fist of the mind, becomes much easier when we realize that the fruit we are so desperately clinging to is not as solid, real, or satisfying as we imagine. When we look deeply at the objects of our desire and our aversion, we find that they too are like the king's chariot composite, dependent, and ultimately lacking any solid, independent essence. This investigation leads us to one of the most profound and liberating teachings of all, the wisdom of emptiness, or sunyata. We have seen how the twin engines of our suffering are the relentless pull of attachment and the violent push of aversion. We are like the monkey in the story, trapped not by an external force, but by our own desperate clinging to a piece of fruit. The ultimate path to freedom, the story suggests, is to simply open the hand and let go. This act of letting go becomes profoundly easier when we investigate the nature of the very fruit we are grasping. It becomes easier when we see that the objects of our desire and our hatred, the things we crave, and the things we despise are not as solid or real as they appear. This is an inquiry into one of the most sublime and liberating teachings of the Buddhist path, the wisdom of sunyata, or emptiness. The word emptiness can be frightening. It can conjure images of a cold, black void, of nihilism, of a universe devoid of meaning. This is a fundamental misunderstanding. The Buddhist concept of emptiness is not nothingness. It is a vibrant, positive, and deeply relational understanding of reality. When the teaching says that things are empty, it means they are empty of a separate, independent, isolated self. It means that nothing exists on its own, from its own side. Everything in the cosmos arises in dependence upon everything else. Emptiness is the other side of the coin of profound, radical interconnectedness. Because things are empty of a separate self, they are full of the entire universe. Let us explore this with a simple, concrete example. Imagine you are holding a single flower in your hand. We give it the label flower. It seems like a distinct, separate thing. But let us look deeply into the nature of this flower. What is it truly made of? As we gaze into it, we can see the sunshine. Without the sun, the flower could not exist. So, the sun is a part of the flower. We can see the clouds and the rain. Without water, the flower would wither and die. So, the clouds and the rain are in the flower. We can see the rich, dark earth, the minerals and nutrients that the roots absorbed. The earth itself is in the flower. We can see the air, the carbon dioxide that the flower breathes in to create its form. The air is in the flower. If we continue to look, we can see the person who planted the seed, the generations of farmers who cultivated the plant, the entire web of life that makes the flower's existence possible. Now, let us try to find the separate flower. Let us begin to remove all of these non-flower elements. Take away the sunshine, take away the rain and the clouds, take away the earth and the minerals, take away the air. What is left? There is nothing left. The flower is composed entirely of things that we do not call flower. It is empty of any intrinsic, separate flowerness. Its entire existence is a miraculous coming together of the rest of the universe. This is the meaning behind the most famous line from the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The form of the flower, when we look deeply, is revealed to be empty of a separate self. And the emptiness of the flower is not a void. It is precisely what allows the form to manifest. Because the flower is empty of a self, it is open and receptive to the sun, the rain, and the soil. Emptiness is the womb of all possibility, the fertile ground from which all forms arise. The flower is beautiful and alive precisely because it is empty, allowing it to be full of the entire cosmos. Now, let us turn this powerful inquiry upon ourselves. We use the label me. We feel like a separate self. But let's look deeply. We can see our parents and our ancestors within us. Their genes are the very blueprint of our bodies. They are not separate from us. We can see the food we ate this morning, the wheat, the fruit, the water. These non-use elements have crossed a boundary and have literally become the cells of our body. The universe is inside us, building us in every moment. We can see the air we are breathing, an intimate exchange with the atmosphere of the planet. We can see our teachers, our culture, the language we are thinking in right now. All of these non-you elements have shaped the very structure of our consciousness. Now, let us try to find the separate you. Take away your parents and ancestors. Take away the food, the water, the air. Take away your language and all the ideas you have ever learned. What is left? Just like the flower, we find that we are empty of a separate, independent self. Our existence is a manifestation of the entire universe. We are not a lonely drop. We are a wave in the great ocean of being. This realization is not an intellectual exercise. It is the key to dissolving our deepest forms of suffering. When we feel like a small, isolated ego, we experience alienation, loneliness, and fear. We feel like a fragile self, struggling against a vast and indifferent universe. The wisdom of emptiness dissolves this illusion. When you truly see your interconnectedness, how can you feel lonely? You contain the sun, the moon, the earth, and all your ancestors. The entire universe is conspiring in every moment to create your existence. This gives rise to a profound sense of belonging and gratitude. Compassion also arises naturally, not as a moral duty, but as a logical consequence of this insight. When we see that another person is also an interconnected process, empty of a separate self, driven by countless causes and conditions, it becomes difficult to hold on to anger and resentment. We see their suffering and our suffering as part of the same interconnected web. The artificial barrier between self and other becomes porous and transparent. Furthermore, this wisdom frees us from the tyranny of attachment and aversion. When we see that the object of our desperate craving being it, wealth, status, or even a particular personas itself, an empty, impermanent, and dependent phenomenon, our clinging grasp naturally loosens. Why dedicate our lives to desperately grasping a cloud? When we see that the object of our hatred is also an empty, composite phenomenon, our aversion loses its solid target. The charge is neutralized. We can begin to relate to the world with a newfound sense of ease, grace, and fluid intelligence. So, sunyata is not a bleak philosophy of nothingness. It is the ultimate statement of relationship. It is the understanding that nothing exists in isolation. Everything inter is, in the beautiful phrase of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. The flower inter is with the sun. The human inter is with the planet. This profound vision of reality reveals that the mind we have come to know, with all its thoughts, beliefs, and ego structures, is also not a fixed, solid thing. It is a conditioned, constructed process. This leads us to a beautiful and mysterious question. If this mind that we know is a construction, what was there before the construction began? What is the nature of consciousness in its most raw, pristine, and original state before it was shaped by experience, language, and the creation of a self? This inquiry takes us beyond the phenomenal world and into the heart of Zen, to the exploration of what is called our original face the mind before the mirror begins to reflect. We have journeyed through the profound wisdom of emptiness, seeing that all things, including ourselves, are empty of a separate, independent existence. We are not solid things, but interconnected processes. The flower is full of the cosmos. You are full of the universe. The mind we thought was a fixed entity is also a conditioned, dependent, and flowing process. This realization, as deep as it is, naturally gives rise to an even more intimate and mysterious question. If the mind I know, with all its habits, memories, and stories, is a construction, what was there before the construction began? What is the nature of the mind in its most pristine, original state? This is an inquiry that leads us away from what we have learned and toward what we have always been. It is a quest for what Zen masters call our original face. In the Zen tradition, a student might be given a question, a koan, that cannot be solved by the logical mind. One of the most famous of these is, before your parents were born, what was your original face? Sit with this question for a moment. Feel its shape. The intellect immediately tries to grasp it and fails. It is not a question about genetics. It is not a riddle about reincarnation. It is a pointing finger, a tool designed to break the machine of conceptual thought. The question is a pointer to a reality that exists prior to all the dualities we use to define our world. Before there was a you and a me. Before there was a past and a future. Before there was good and bad. Before there was even birth and death. What is the nature of that which is? The question asks you to look at the unconditioned, timeless ground of being itself. To explore this, we can use the metaphor of the mind before the mirror. Our ordinary mind is like a mirror that is constantly held up to the world. It reflects everything: sights, sounds, thoughts, feelings. But our problem is not just that it reflects, it is that it clings to the reflections. It identifies with them. It sees a pleasant reflection and says, I want more of that. It sees an unpleasant reflection and says, I must get rid of that. It sees a reflection of a face and says, that is me. This clinging, judging, and identifying mind is the source of our turmoil. The mind before the mirror refers to the nature of consciousness before it is held up to the world, before it begins this process of reflecting and grasping. It is the pure potentiality of the mirror itself, pristine and unstained. It is a mind that does not divide the world into a knower and a thing known. There is no eye seeing a tree. There is just seamless, unified seeing. It is a state of pure, simple, undivided present. This state, this original nature, is the very reality we have been seeking throughout this entire journey. It is the mind in the gap between thoughts. It is the silence from which thought arises. But we must be careful not to imagine this state as a dull, empty, or trance-like void. That is a projection of a mind that fears its own absence. The reality is quite the opposite. This original mind is intensely, vibrantly alive. It is a state of silent, luminous clarity. It is the world experienced directly, without the filtering, labeling, and judging activity of the conceptual mind. It is seeing the world with the fresh, astonished eyes of a newborn child, but imbued with the deep, silent wisdom of a sage. It is not the absence of life, but life itself in its most raw, immediate, and sacred form. This is not just a beautiful idea, it is a reality that can be directly realized. The story of the sixth patriarch of Zen, Huineng, is the classic tale of this awakening. Huineng was not a learned scholar or a seasoned monk. He was a poor, illiterate young man who sold firewood to support his mother. His mind was simple and unlettered, a mind before the mirror that had not been overly polished or filled with concepts. One day, while delivering firewood in a marketplace, he happened to overhear a man reciting a line from a Buddhist scripture called the Diamond Sutra. The line was, "Develop a mind that dwells on nothing whatsoever." Or, to put it another way, let your mind arise without resting or clinging to anything. Upon hearing these words, Huineng was struck as if by a bolt of lightning. He experienced a profound and instantaneous awakening. In that moment, he realized that the entire secret of enlightenment was contained in that single phrase. To dwell on nothing means that the mind ceases its ceaseless activity of landing and building a nest on things. It stops clinging to thoughts, to feelings, to sense objects, to ideas about itself. When this frantic activity of grasping ceases, even for an instant, the mind's true nature naturally, pure, clear, and luminous shines forth. It is not something that is produced. It is something that is revealed when the obscurations are removed. In that moment, Huineng recognized his original face. This story teaches us the most important lesson about this path. Our original nature is not a future goal to be achieved through years of hard work. You cannot attain it because you have never for an instant lost it. It is the very ground of your being, the fabric of your consciousness, right here, right now. The sky has always been the sky, even on the cloudiest of days. The mirror has always been pure, even when reflecting the muddiest of images. The problem is not that our original nature is absent, but that it is obscured by the frantic activity of our clinging mind. Therefore, the spiritual path is not a striving forward to become something new. It is a relaxing backward into what you already are. It is a process of unlearning, of undoing, of unbecoming the false, constructed, and burdensome self that we have mistaken for our true identity. Every time we practice, every time we notice a thought and allow it to pass without chasing it, every time we feel an emotion and allow it to be without becoming it, every time we let go of a judgment about ourselves or other sway are touching our original nature. We are remembering the face we had before we were born. We are coming home. When the mind begins to settle back into this state of natural, unfabricated simplicity, when the restless striving of the ego subsides, something beautiful and unexpected begins to happen. A new quality begins to radiate from our being, effortlessly and spontaneously. Just as the sun cannot help but radiate light and warmth, a mind that is quiet and at peace with itself cannot help but radiate a boundless and unconditional warmth toward all of life. This is not a forced sentimentality or an emotional pity. It is the spontaneous expression of our realized interconnectedness. It is the arising of true compassion, or karuna. As the restless, chattering mind begins to settle, as we learn to rest in the silent, open space of our original nature, something remarkable occurs. The mind does not become cold, distant, or unfeeling. On the contrary, as the frantic noise of the ego subsides, a natural warmth begins to radiate from the core of our being, effortlessly and spontaneously. Just as the sun, by its very nature, radiates light and heat, a mind that is at peace with itself radiates a boundless and unconditional warmth toward all of life. This is not an emotion that we manufacture or a moral code that we follow. It is the spontaneous arising of true compassion, the Sanskrit word for which is karuna. It is essential to distinguish this profound quality from its more common imitations, such as pity or sentimentality. Pity looks down from above. It creates and reinforces a sense of separation. When we feel pity for someone, there is an implicit message. Oh, you poor thing, I am here, in my safe and superior position, feeling sorry for you, over there in your suffering. Pity is an act of the ego, and it often serves to make us feel better about ourselves rather than truly connecting with the other person. Sentimentality, on the other hand, is to become lost in the emotion of another, to drown alongside them. We see their sadness, and we become consumed by our own sadness in response. This is not helpful. It simply creates two people in distress instead of one. True compassion, karuna, is born from the wisdom we have been cultivating. It arises from the direct experience of anatta, no self, and sunyata, emptiness. When the hard, artificial walls of the separate self begin to dissolve, we realize that there is no fundamental separation between me and you. We are expressions of the same interconnected web of life. Therefore, your suffering is not just your problem. In a very real sense, it is also my suffering, not because I am imagining it, but because we share the same existential ground. Compassion is the heart's natural resonance with the truth of dukkha. It is the trembling of our own heart in response to the trembling of another's. This can only arise from a place of inner stillness. A mind that is preoccupied with its own anxieties, its own ambitions, and its own endless stories is like a room filled with loud, distracting music. It simply does not have the capacity to truly listen, to feel into the experience of another. When our own inner noise quiets down, we create the inner space required to be truly present for others, to receive their pain without needing to immediately fix it or push it away. There is a story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates the active nature of compassion beautifully. As a young prince, Siddhartha was walking in the palace gardens with his cousin, Devadatta. Devadatta was known for being competitive and cruel. Seeing a swan flying overhead, he took up his bow and shot it out of the sky. Both boys ran toward the fallen bird. Devadatta, proud of his skill, ran to claim his prize, his kill. But Siddhartha reached the wounded bird first. Seeing the swan, trembling in terror and pain, Siddhartha did not see a trophy. He felt the bird's fear and pain as if it were his own. With the utmost tenderness, he gently cradled the bird, carefully removed the sharp arrow from its wing, and used cool leaves to soothe the wound. He held the bird close to his heart, offering it comfort and safety. When Devadatta arrived, he furiously demanded the swan, proclaiming, "I shot it, therefore it is mine." Siddhartha looked at his cousin and replied with a statement that is the very embodiment of compassionate law. Life belongs not to the one who seeks to destroy it, but to the one who seeks to preserve it. Compassion, we see here, is not a passive feeling of sadness. It is an active, intelligent, and courageous response to suffering. It moves to protect, to heal, and to alleviate pain, not from a sense of moral obligation, but from a place of profound kinship with all that lives. One of the greatest expressions of this compassion is learning to be present with another's pain without trying to fix it. When someone we care about is suffering, our own discomfort often makes us want to jump in with advice, solutions, and cheerful platitudes. Don't cry. Look on the bright side. You should try doing this. While our intentions may be good, this fix-it mentality often serves our own need to escape the discomfort of witnessing their pain. True compassion is the willingness to simply be with them in their darkness. It is the ability to offer the silent, unwavering gift of your presence, creating a safe and non-judgmental space in which they can feel whatever it is they are feeling. This presence communicates something far more powerful than any advice could. You are not alone. I am not afraid of your pain. I can bear to be here with you. This, in itself, is an act of profound healing. While compassion arises spontaneously from a quiet mind, we can also actively cultivate it. We can water this seed that lies within our original nature through the practice of metta, or loving-kindness meditation. This practice is a way of intentionally directing the heart's warmth toward ourselves and all other beings. You begin with yourself. This is the essential first step. It is very difficult to have genuine compassion for others if we are at war with ourselves. Sitting quietly, you can repeat gentle phrases directed inward. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. You are offering yourself the same kindness and care you would offer a dear friend. Next, you bring to mind a beloved friend or benefactor, someone for whom you feel easy and uncomplicated affection. You then direct the phrases toward them, picturing them clearly. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Allow yourself to feel the natural warmth that arises in your heart as you offer these wishes. Then the circle widens. You bring to mind a neutral person, someone you neither like nor dislike, perhaps a person you see at the grocery store or at work. You offer them the very same wishes, recognizing their wish to be happy just like you. This begins to break down the barriers of indifference. The most challenging, and perhaps most transformative, step is to then bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict or resentment. As best you can, without forcing it, you try to offer them the same phrases of loving kindness. This practice is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is about freeing your own heart from the poison of hatred. Resentment is a prison we build for ourselves. This practice is the key to our own liberation. Finally, you radiate this feeling of loving kindness outward in all directions, to all beings without exception, near and far, seen and unseen. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. This is not about trying to fake a feeling. It is the sincere planting of a seed, an intention. With repetition, this intention takes root, and the heart's capacity for boundless, unconditional love begins to blossom. This boundless compassion, this ability to be present with difficulty, is not just a gift we give to others. Its most powerful application is often the one we direct inward. How do we apply this same warm, spacious, and non-judgmental acceptance to the most difficult and painful storms that arise within our own minds? How do we learn to face our own anger, our own fear, and our own grief without being consumed by them? This leads us to the sacred and alchemical practice of turning our own poison into medicine. The boundless compassion we have cultivated is not just a gift we offer to others. Its most courageous and transformative application is often the one we direct inward. We must learn to offer this same warm, spacious, and non-judgmental presence to the most difficult and feared inhabitants of our own inner world. Our anger, our grief, our anxiety, our shame. For most of our lives, we have been at war with these emotions. We treat them as enemies to be defeated, poisons to be purged. But the path of wisdom reveals a different way, an alchemical process that does not seek to destroy these powerful energies, but to transmute them. This is the sacred art of turning poison into medicine. Our conventional relationship with difficult emotions typically follows one of three unskillful paths. The first is suppression. When anger or fear arises, we push it down, we stuff it away, we pretend it isn't there. We put on a brave face and tell ourselves and the world that we are fine. This is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It requires constant, exhausting effort, and the suppressed energy doesn't disappear. It festers in the darkness of our subconscious, eventually erupting with unexpected and often destructive force, or manifesting as chronic anxiety and physical illness. The second path is unhealthy indulgence. Here, we do the opposite of suppression. We become completely identified with the emotion. We let the anger possess us entirely, lashing out with words or actions that cause harm to others and ourselves. We allow the grief to swallow us whole, drowning in a sea of despair. We become the emotion, and in doing so, we abdicate all our wisdom and power, becoming a puppet to its raw, untamed energy. The third path is distraction. This is perhaps the most common strategy in our modern world. When an uncomfortable feeling arises, we immediately reach for a numbing agent. We lose ourselves in the endless scroll of our phones. We binge watch a series. We overwork. We overeat. We turn to substances. We do anything and everything to avoid the discomfort of simply being with what is true in our inner world. All three of these strategy suppression, indulgence, and distractionary forms of aversion. They are rooted in fear, in the belief that these emotions are dangerous and must be avoided at all costs. The alchemical path offers a radical alternative. Instead of running, we turn toward the emotion. Instead of fighting, we invite it to sit with us. We meet it with the same courageous, compassionate presence that the Buddha offered to the world. We treat the difficult emotion not as an enemy, but as a messenger carrying vital information for our healing and growth. This practice is direct and embodied. It begins by shifting our attention away from the mental story about the emotion and toward the raw, physical energy of the emotion in the body. Let us say a wave of anger arises. The mind will immediately begin its narrative. He shouldn't have done that. This is unfair. I am so right to be angry. The practice is to let go of this story just for a moment and to drop your awareness into your body. Where do you physically feel this anger? Is it a burning heat in your chest and face? Is it a tight, clenched knot in your stomach? Is it a buzzing tension in your hands and jaw? Once you have located the sensation, you bring a gentle, scientific curiosity to it. Without judging it or wishing it were different, you simply investigate its qualities. Is the sensation hot or cold? Is it sharp or dull? Is it vibrating, solid, or liquid? Does it have a size, a shape, a texture? You are not analyzing why you are angry. You are becoming an intimate expert on what the raw energy of anger feels like in your own body. As you hold these physical sensations in your awareness, you then begin to breathe into them. Imagine your breath is a stream of warm, spacious energy. You gently direct this breath into the area of tightness or heat. You are not trying to blow the feeling away. You are doing the opposite. You are creating space around it. You are softening the resistance to it. You are communicating to this powerful energy. You are welcome here. I am willing to feel you. There is enough space in me to hold you. When an emotion is met in this way, when it is fully seen, acknowledged, and felt in the body without the interference of judgment or storia, magical transformation occurs. It's blocked energy, which was creating so much pain and tension, begins to move. It begins to soften, to dissolve, and to release. The knot in the stomach may unwind. The heat in the chest may dissipate. You may find tears beginning to flow, releasing the deep hurt that was hiding beneath the anger. The poison, when met with the alchemy of compassionate awareness, transforms itself into the medicine of release, insight, and healing. There is a powerful story that illustrates this principle of meeting poison with presence. It is the story of the dreaded serial killer Angulimala, whose name meant garland of fingers because he wore a necklace made from the fingers of his many victims. He was the embodiment of rage and violence, a terror to all who lived in the region. One day, the Buddha learned that Angulimala was on a particular path, and he deliberately began to walk down that same road. Angulimala saw the calm, solitary monk and thought, an easy victim. He began to run after the Buddha, but a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and enraged, he finally screamed, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha, without breaking his stride, replied over his shoulder, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not." Angulimala was stunned into silence. The Buddha explained that he had stopped the endless cycle of violence, hatred, and causing harm. He had stopped running from himself. It was Angulimala who was still running, propelled by the relentless poisons of his own mind. The Buddha's complete lack of fear, his unwavering, compassionate presence, was a force so powerful that it disarmed the killer completely. It was a medicine that neutralized the poison on the spot, initiating a profound transformation that led to Angulimala eventually becoming an enlightened monk himself. This is how we must learn to meet the Angulimalas within our own hearts. When a wave of rage or terror arises, our instinct is to either run from it or try to kill it. The path of wisdom is to do neither. It is to stop, to stand our ground, and to meet that ferocious energy with the fearless, compassionate presence of our own awareness. This is what allows it to be transformed. Within this transformation, we discover that every difficult emotion is a wise messenger in disguise. The energy of anger, once we move beyond the story, often points to a deep feeling of hurt, a sense of injustice, or a boundary that has been violated. It can be a powerful, protective energy when harnessed with wisdom. Fear points directly to the edges of our comfort zone, showing us exactly where we have an opportunity to cultivate courage and trust. And grief is the natural, unavoidable expression of love in the face of loss. To feel grief is to honor the connection that was there. By turning toward these emotions and listening to their deeper message, we learn to harvest their wisdom instead of merely suffering from their symptoms. As we become more skillful at navigating this inner landscape, as we learn to alchemize the poisons of our own heart, something remarkable happens. Our perception of the world itself begins to change. The rigid boundary between our inner world of emotion and the outer world of events starts to become fluid and transparent. We begin to see the deeply mind-created, dreamlike nature of all experience. This insight leads us to a profound and liberating shift in how we perceive reality itself. As we become more adept at the inner alchemy of turning our emotional poisons into medicine, a subtle and profound shift begins to occur in our perception. The hard, bright line we have always drawn between our inner world of thoughts and feelings and the outer world of people and events begins to waver and dissolve. We start to see how much our inner state colors and creates our experience of the outer world. This realization is a doorway into one of the most mysterious and liberating perspectives found in the deep spiritual traditions of the world. The understanding of the world as a dream. To say the world is like a dream is not to say that it is unreal, that nothing matters, or that our actions have no consequences. Anyone who has had a vivid nightmare knows that a dream can feel intensely, terrifyingly real. Actions within the dream have consequences within the dream's logic. Rather, the analogy points to a crucial truth about the nature of our experience. We never perceive a purely objective, external reality. Our experience of the world is always a co-creation, a joint venture between the raw data of the senses and the vast, conditioned library of our own mind. Consider a simple objective event. Water is falling from the sky. It is a rainy day. To a farmer whose fields are dry and cracking, this rain is a blessing, a source of profound joy and relief. Their reality is a happy one. To a child who was planning to spend the day playing outside, the same rain is a catastrophe, a source of frustration and disappointment. Their reality is a sad one. To a couple in love, looking out the window from a cozy room, the rain might seem romantic and beautiful, a backdrop for their intimacy. Their reality is a peaceful one. To a person living on the streets without shelter, the same rain is a source of deep misery, cold, and even danger. Their reality is a threatening one. The rain is the same. The water molecules are identical, but the reality of the experience is completely different for each person. This is because the external event is being filtered through the screen of their individual minds, their needs, their hopes, their memories, their current situation. We are never just seeing what is out there. We are always seeing a combination of what is out there and what is in here. We are all living in a world constructed by our own minds. This is not just spiritual philosophy. It is a description of how our consciousness works. Our senses are incredibly limited filters. Our eyes can only perceive a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. We cannot see radio waves or X-rays. Our ears can only hear a narrow range of frequencies. We cannot hear the ultrasonic calls of a bat. The world around us is a blooming, buzzing, vibrating infinity of energy, and our brain receives a very small, edited down sliver of this data. It then takes this limited information and, like a powerful supercomputer, constructs a useful, navigable, 3D model of reality for us to live in. We then mistake this model for the reality itself. On top of this, our past experiences, our cultural conditioning, our moods, and our beliefs all act as colored filters on the lens of our perception. If you are feeling fearful, the world literally seems more dangerous. If you are feeling joyful, the world appears more friendly and benevolent. The world changes because your mind changes. The most helpful way to understand our relationship to this dreamlike reality is to think of it like watching a movie. When we are engrossed in a great film, we participate emotionally. We laugh at the comedy. We feel suspense during the chase. We may even cry during a tragic scene. Our bodies react as if the events were real. Our hearts race. Our palms sweat. We are fully immersed in the experience. And yet, even in the most intense moments of the film, a part of our awareness remains untouched. A part of us knows on some level that this is a movie. We know that these are actors, that it is just light and shadow being projected onto a screen. We know that when the credits roll and the house lights come up, we will be able to stand up and walk out of the theater unharmed and unchanged by the drama we have just witnessed. This dual awareness is the key. It allows us to participate in the richness of the experience without being a victim of it. This is the invitation, to learn to live our lives with this same dual awareness. We are learning to be fully engaged in the movie of our life, to feel its joys and sorrows, to meet its challenges, to love its characters, while simultaneously remembering that it is all a transient, luminous display projected on the vast, pristine screen of our own consciousness. We are learning to shift our core identity from being one of the actors in the drama to being the screen itself, the silent, ever-present awareness that allows the whole show to happen. The liberating power of this perspective is immense. It fundamentally changes our relationship with both success and failure, pleasure and pain. When you see the dreamlike nature of life, you naturally stop taking it all so terribly seriously and so painfully personally. In a dream, if you were to win a great fortune, you would enjoy the thrill, but you would not build your entire identity on being a dream millionaire. If you were to be insulted in a dream, you might feel a sting, but you would not carry the wound with you after waking up. In the same way, living with this view allows us to hold our worldly successes and failures more lightly. The frantic, desperate grip of attachment and aversion begins to loosen. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune lose much of their power to wound us because we realize they are happening to a dream character, not to our essential, sky-like being. This does not lead to apathy or carelessness. It leads to the opposite, a sense of lightness, playfulness, and profound freedom. Life ceases to be a heavy, serious problem that we must constantly struggle with and solve. It becomes more like a dance, a piece of music, a grand, unfolding play. We can participate with more creativity, authenticity, and courage because we are less burdened by the crippling fear of what might happen to our constructed self-image. We are free to improvise, to love more daringly, to speak our truth more clearly when we are not so terrified of the consequences for our imaginary self. It brings a sense of wonder and awe back into our lives. When we are not trapped by our rigid ideas of how things should be, we can see the world as it is, a mysterious, miraculous, and ever-changing display of light and energy. The world we experience is a co-creation, a luminous dream woven from sensory input and the fabric of our own minds. To understand this is not to check out of life, but to finally be able to live it fully. It is to be in the world, but not of it. It is to learn how to dance in the rain without being swept away by the flood. When we live from this understanding, when we see the world as a flowing, dreamlike display and ourselves as the spacious awareness in which it appears, our very way of acting within that world undergoes a profound transformation. We discover that we no longer need to struggle, to force, and to strive against the current. We can learn to act in harmony with the natural flow of life. This leads us to the sublime art of effortless action, a state the Taoist sages called Wu Wei. When we begin to see the world as a fluid, dreamlike river, our relationship to action undergoes a profound change. The old way of being, the way of our culture, is to struggle against the current. We believe that through sheer force of will, through relentless effort and strategic control, we can conquer the river of life and bend it to our desires. This approach is born of the ego, the separate self that feels it is at war with the world. It is an exhausting and ultimately futile struggle, creating immense tension, anxiety, and burnout. But there is another way. It is the way of the sage, the master artisan, the champion athlete. It is the art of acting in harmony with the flow of life, of using the river's own current to guide our boat. This is the sublime art of effortless action, or what the Taoist masters called Wu Wei. Wu Wei is a concept that is easily misunderstood. It does not mean laziness, passivity, or apathy. It is not about sitting back and doing nothing while life passes you by. The most accurate translation is action that is non-action, which means acting without the sense of a separate I who is performing the action. It is action that arises spontaneously and perfectly from a place of deep inner stillness, without the clumsy interference of the conscious, calculating ego. We have all had glimpses of this state. Think of an athlete who is in the zone. A basketball player sinks every shot, their body moving with a fluid intelligence that is faster than thought. There is no time to think, I should bend my knees, I should aim this way. The action happens through them perfectly and without effort. Think of a jazz musician improvising a brilliant solo. Their fingers dance across the keys, not because they are consciously choosing each note, but because they have become a pure conduit for the music itself. The music is playing the musician. Think of a skilled craftsman, a potter whose hands shape the clay on the wheel. There is a wisdom in the hands themselves, a felt sense of the clay's potential that guides the process far better than any mental blueprint could. In all these cases, the self-conscious doer gets out of the way and a deeper, more intuitive intelligence takes over. This is the state of Wu Wei. Our normal way of operating is based on the principle of control. The ego believes it is the CEO of our life, and it must manage everything. It plans, it worries, it analyzes, it forces, it manipulates. This creates a constant sense of strain. We are trying to micromanage the universe. Wu Wei, on the other hand, is based on the principle of trust. It is not a blind faith, but a deep, intelligent trust in the natural unfolding of life, a trust that is born from the stillness we have been cultivating. A quiet mind can perceive the subtle currents of a situation, the hidden potentials, the right timing, far more clearly than a mind that is agitated by anxiety and ambition. Wu Wei is like being a skilled sailor. The sailor does not try to conquer the wind. That would be foolish. Instead, they study the wind, they feel it, they respect it, and then they adjust their sails with sublime skill, using the very power of the wind to carry them precisely where they want to go. They act in harmony with a force greater than themselves. There is a wonderful story told by the sage Zhuangzi that illustrates how this effortless mastery is cultivated. A great crowd had gathered to watch a famous archer who could perform incredible feats of skill. As the archer hit one difficult target after another, the crowd roared its approval. Standing at the edge of the crowd was an old, unassuming oil seller who merely nodded his head, looking unimpressed. The archer, his pride stung, approached the old man and said, "You see my skill with the bow. Do you have some skill to show us?" The old man said nothing. He simply took a gourd, which had a narrow mouth, and placed a coin with a tiny hole in its center over the opening. Then, taking a large ladle full of oil, he raised it high and in one smooth, continuous motion poured the oil. It streamed down in a perfect, unbroken line, straight through the hole in the coin and into the gourd, without a single drop touching the coin itself. The crowd was speechless. The archer, humbled, asked him his secret. The old man smiled and said, "There is no secret. It is merely a matter of long practice." This is the key to Wu Wei. The oil seller's perfect, effortless action was not the result of a magic trick or a complex intellectual formula. It was the fruit of thousands upon thousands of hours of patient, mindful practice. Through this dedicated repetition, the wisdom of the action had seeped from his thinking mind into the very cells of his body. The knowledge was now in his hands, in his muscles, in his bones. He no longer needed to think about how to pour the oil. His body knew. The clumsy, self-conscious I had gotten out of the way, allowing for an act of perfect flowing grace. This effortless action arises from a mind of stillness. When the mind is quiet, we are no longer driven by the frantic agenda of the egoite's insatiable need for approval, its paralyzing fear of failure, its constant comparison with others. This quieting of the ego allows a deeper, more authentic intelligence to shine through. Our actions become clear, appropriate responses to the needs of the moment, rather than anxious projections of our own desires. This is the crucial difference between striving and inspired action. Striving is the energy of the ego. It is tense, forceful, and comes from a feeling of lack. It is the voice that says, "I must make this happen or I will not be okay." It is the energy of the man trying to row a boat against a powerful current. Inspired action, or Wu Wei, is the energy of our true nature. It is relaxed, flowing, and comes from a place of fullness and clarity. It is the feeling that the action is happening through you rather than being done by you. It often feels joyful and light, even when it involves what looks like hard work. It is the sailor using the wind. How do we begin to live this way? We start small. In ordinary tasks like washing the dishes, sweeping the floor, or typing an email, we can practice bringing a relaxed, full attention to the movement itself, letting go of the inner narrator who is judging our performance. We can dedicate ourselves to mindful practice in our chosen field, like the old oil seller, allowing mastery to develop organically rather than trying to force it. We can learn to listen to our intuition. When faced with a decision, instead of only relying on a pro and con list, we can create a space of inner silence and listen for the deeper, quieter knowing that arises from that stillness. We can learn to embrace the wisdom of not knowing, trusting that clarity will emerge when the time is right, rather than forcing a premature choice out of anxiety. This state of effortless, flowing grace, this art of Wu Wei, is the dance of life where the self-conscious dancer disappears and only the dance remains. It is the natural expression of a mind that has found its center, but its full expression is only possible when we are no longer being constantly pulled off center by the voice in our head, the inner critic and commentator who believes it is the one in charge. The greatest obstacle to Wu Wei is this relentless inner narrator. To truly live from a place of stillness, we must first learn to gain freedom from this storyteller. We must see it, understand its function, and ultimately dissolve our identification with it. The art of effortless action, Wu Wei, arises when we learn to act from a place of deep inner stillness. Yet for most of us, this stillness is constantly disturbed. There is a voice in our head that never seems to stop talking. It is a relentless inner narrator, a backseat driver offering a constant stream of commentary, judgment, criticism, and advice on the unfolding movie of our lives. This voice is the greatest obstacle to peace. It is the very engine of the ego. To find true freedom, we must learn to see this storyteller for what it is and gently, patiently withdraw our belief in its stories. Take a moment right now to listen, not to my voice, but to the voice inside your own head. Notice the stream of subvocalized thoughts that are present. Perhaps it is thinking about these words, agreeing or disagreeing. Perhaps it is wondering what you will do after this. Perhaps it is replaying a conversation from yesterday or planning one for tomorrow. That is the voice. That is the storyteller. For your entire life, this voice has been the narrator of your reality. It is the one that says, I'm feeling tired, I'm not good at this, I really need to get that done. What will they think of me? The primary function of this storyteller is to create and maintain a central character for its narrative. That character is me. The storyteller weaves every random thought, every fleeting feeling, every sensory experience into a continuous, coherent, and often highly dramatic story, with me as the beleaguered hero or the tragic victim. This story, this long, complex narrative of my life, is what we mistake for our identity, and this storyteller, this tireless author of our personal soap opera, is the direct source of the vast majority of our psychological suffering. It generates anxiety by telling terrifying stories about the future. It generates regret and resentment by endlessly re-editing and replaying painful stories from the past. It generates a sense of inadequacy by telling us stories about how the character of me doesn't measure up to other characters. How do we free ourselves from a storyteller that lives inside our own mind? The first, most crucial step is to understand that you cannot fight it. Trying to forcibly stop your thoughts is just another thought. It is the storyteller creating a new plot line, the story of how I became a person with a quiet mind. This is just another trap, another layer of struggle. The path to freedom is not through fighting the voice, but through fundamentally changing your relationship to it. Imagine there is a radio playing in the corner of a room. It has been on for your entire life, so you have become accustomed to its sound. It plays a mixture of news reports, commercials, talk shows, and dramas. Because it has always been there, you have come to believe that everything it says is true and is about you. The skillful practice is to simply notice, for the first time, that it is just a radio. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to believe the news reports it broadcasts about your impending doom. You don't have to buy the products it advertises for a happier life. You simply notice, with a detached, neutral interest, the radio is on again. In the same way, we can learn to listen to the stream of thoughts in our head as if it were this radio. When a thought like, I'm going to fail at this important task, arises, instead of immediately grabbing it, believing it, and spiraling into anxiety, we can practice just noticing it. The storyteller is broadcasting from radio station fear. When a resentful thought about someone arises, we can notice, there's the storyteller playing a golden oldie from the resentment hour. This simple act of impartial listening is profoundly transformative. It creates a space between you, the listener, and the voice that is speaking. You realize the voice is an event happening in your awareness, but it is not the totality of your awareness. It is not you. This practice works because the storyteller, the egoic narrator, is fueled by two things: your attention and your belief. Belief is its food. Your focused attention is its oxygen. Every time you get lost in a train of thought, Every time you become emotionally entangled in its dramas, you are feeding the storyteller, making it stronger, louder, and more convincing. Every time you are able to step back and simply witness the voice without getting hooked, you are withdrawing its food supply. You are cutting off its oxygen. A radio that no one listens to eventually just becomes background noise. A storyteller with no audience eventually grows quiet. The voice may not vanish entirely, but its power over you diminishes. It becomes like a distant murmur rather than a tyrannical commander. Think of a brilliant actor on a stage, playing the role of a tragic king. While on stage, he is completely immersed in the character. He feels the king's sorrow, his rage, his despair. His performance is so convincing that the audience is captivated by the reality of the king's plight. But what happens when the play is over? The curtain falls, the actor takes a bow, and he goes backstage. He walks into his dressing room and begins to remove the heavy royal costume. He wipes away the makeup that created the illusion of age and worry. He leaves the character of the king, along with his sorrows and his crown, in the dressing room. He then goes home as his ordinary, true self, free from the burden of the role he was playing. For our entire lives, most of us have been on stage, believing we are the character that the storyteller has created for us. We are wearing a costume woven from our memories, our beliefs, and our insecurities, and we have forgotten that we are wearing it. The practice of dissolving the storyteller is the act of remembering that we are the actor, not the part. It is the process of learning how to go backstage, to take off the heavy costume of our personal story, and to rest in the silent, spacious awareness that is our true, offstage nature. What is life like when we are no longer living inside this constant narration? It is life experienced directly. It is reality, unfiltered. When you look at a tree, you are not immediately hearing a label or a comparison from the storyteller. You are simply experiencing the stunning, silent, living presence of the tree itself. When you eat a meal, you are tasting the food, not the story of whether you should be eating it or what you will eat tomorrow. When you are with another person, you can listen to them with your whole being, instead of listening to the storyteller in your head as it prepares your rebuttal or judges their appearance. True freedom is not about forcing the storyteller to tell a happier, more positive story. That is simply redecorating the walls of the prison. True freedom is the realization that you do not have to live inside a prison of words at all. You can step out of the story and into your life. When the storyteller finally falls silent, when the incessant chatter of words and concepts subsides, what is left? We are left with direct, unmediated experience. We begin to perceive the world in a new way, a way that is deeper than conceptual thought. We start to hear the music that lies beneath the lyrics. We begin to feel the profound and vibrant stillness that is the true texture of reality. We learn to listen to the sound of silence itself. When the inner storyteller grows quiet, when the relentless radio of the mind finally ceases its broadcast, we are left not in a dead and empty void, but in a state of profound and vibrant stillness. Having journeyed beyond the clamor of our own thoughts, we open up to a new mode of perception, a new way of listening. We learn to listen not just to the sounds of the world, but to the very fabric of silence from which they are born. This is an exploration into the sound of silence itself. Take a moment now to simply listen. Allow your awareness to be like a wide, open satellite dish, receiving the soundscape around you without judgment. You may hear the distant hum of traffic, the chirp of a bird, the gentle rush of air from a vent. Notice how each of these sounds arises out of a background of silence, makes its brief appearance, and then dissolves back into that same silence. The silence is the canvas upon which the sounds are painted. Ordinarily, we are so fascinated by the paintings that we never pay any attention to the canvas itself. The practice now is to gently shift your interest. Instead of focusing on the sounds, can you begin to listen to the silence that holds them? Can you become more interested in the space between the sounds, the quiet feel that is always present, even amidst the noise? This is like looking at a page of text. At first, you only see the black letters, but with a shift in perception, you can become aware of the white page underneath, the space that allows the letters to be legible. The The silence is the white page of existence. We are learning to perceive it directly. The Zen tradition has a famous koan, a question designed to break the conceptual mind that points directly to this experience. A Zen master asks his student, "We know the sound of two hands clapping. It makes a noise. But what is the sound of one hand clapping?" The logical mind immediately hits a wall. It says, "That's impossible. One hand can't make a sound. There is no sound." And in a way, the logical mind is correct. But the koan is not a riddle to be solved with logic. It is an invitation into a direct, non-conceptual experience. The world we normally experience is the world of two hands clapping. It is the world of duality, subject and object, me and you, good and bad, sound and silence, birth and death. It is a world of opposites, of things clashing together to create the noise of phenomenal existence. The sound of one hand clapping is a pointer to the reality that underlies this duality. It is the sound of the source itself before it divides into opposites. It is the soundless sound of pure being, the fundamental hum of the universe that is always present, but is usually drowned out by the louder noise of our thoughts and the sensory world. It is the sound of awareness itself. How can we begin to hear this? This is not an act of straining the physical ears. It is an act of deep, inner listening. It is a relaxation of the attention, a tuning of the inner radio away from the loud, coarse stations of the ego and toward the subtlest frequencies of our own consciousness. Let us try a short exploration. In your quiet, meditative posture, let your attention turn inward. Listen beneath the level of your thoughts. Listen even beneath the gentle rhythm of your breath and the soft beat of your heart. Listen into the deepest stillness you can find within yourself. Be receptive. Do not try to create or imagine a sound. Simply listen for the most subtle vibration you can perceive. For some, it may manifest as a very faint, high-pitched inner ringing, a continuous, pure tone. For others, it may be a low, deep hum, like the sound of a distant ocean or the buzzing of a bumblebee. For others still, it may not be a sound at all, but a felt sense of a silent, vibrant energy, a feeling of aliveness in the stillness. There is no right or wrong way for this to be perceived. The key is to be open and receptive to the subtlest layer of your experience. Once you have a sense of this inner sound, this vibration of silence, you can use it as a profound object of meditation. Just as we once used the breath as our anchor, you can now let your attention rest gently on this soundless sound. Let it be the thread that guides you into deeper and deeper states of peace. As you rest your attention here, you will find that the conceptual mind naturally grows quiet. It is difficult for the storyteller to keep broadcasting when you are so intently listening to the silence. This is not a uniquely Zen experience. In the yogic traditions of India, this inner sound is known as nada, the cosmic sound, or the unstruck melody. The mystics of many traditions have spoken of it in their own language. It is the still, small voice of the Christian contemplative, the music of the spheres. It is a universal signpost pointing toward the source of our being. Resting in this sound of silence is a form of knowing, but it is a knowing that is different from our usual intellectual understanding. Conceptual knowledge is the knowledge of two hands clapping. It is always about something. It divides the world into a knower and a known. The knowledge that arises from resting in this silent awareness is non-dual. In this space, the distinction between the listener and the sound begins to dissolve. There is no longer me listening to a sound. There is only listening. There is only seamless, silent, knowing presence. This experience cannot be adequately captured in words. Words are the tools of the world of duality. They are themselves a form of noise. Any attempt to describe this silence will inevitably fail, just as a menu can never convey the actual taste of a meal. This stage of the journey is about cultivating a deep trust in your own direct experience, valuing it even above the most eloquent philosophical concepts. By learning to quiet the inner storyteller, we have opened our perception to a dimension of reality that was previously hidden in plain sight. We have learned to hear the sound of one hand clapping, the vibrant, silent hum of pure awareness itself. Resting our attention in this soundless sound is a profound and direct path to peace, a way of abiding in our true nature, beyond all the noise and confusion of the conceptual mind. This entire journey from first observing the restless mind, to anchoring ourselves in the breath, to seeing through the illusion of the separate self, and finally to resting in the sound of silence brings us full circle. It is a journey that has taken us away from the endless, self-created complexity of our lives and returned us to a state of profound and simple wholeness. We are now ready to explore how to carry this sacred simplicity back into the marketplace of our complex modern world. We are ready to return to the wisdom of the uncarved block. We have journeyed far. We have moved from the frantic chatter of the storyteller to the deep, resonant hum of silence. We have listened for the sound of one hand clapping and found that it is the sound of our own quiet, aware being. This entire journey, from the complexity of the anxious mind to the simplicity of silent awareness, is a process of return. It is a path of unlearning, of undoing, of letting go of the intricate and burdensome structures we have built in order to come home to something that was always there. This homecoming is a return to our original simplicity, a state the ancient Taoist sages beautifully described as the uncarved block. Imagine a block of wood, fresh from the forest. It is simple, whole, and natural. It holds within it an infinite potential. It could be carved into a table, a chair, a beautiful statue, or a simple tool. But in its uncarved state, it is pure potentiality. This is the Taoist symbol known as Pu. It represents our own original nature, the mind in its primal state of simplicity, before it has been carved and shaped by the world. From the moment we are born, the world begins to carve us. Our parents, our education, our culture, and most of all, our own developing ego act as the chisels and knives. We are carved into a specific personality. We are given a name, a set of beliefs, a complex history, and a catalog of opinions, likes, and dislikes. We become a some-think a doctor, an artist, a parent, an anxious person, a successful person, and in the process of being carved into this definite shape, we lose the supple freedom and infinite potential of the uncarved block. We become rigid. We identify so completely with the carved shape that we forget the simple natural wood from which we were made. The spiritual path is not about carving ourselves into a more beautiful or holy statue. It is the process of returning to the wood itself. It is not about becoming a saintly someone, but about having the courage to become a simple no-thing. The question naturally arises, does this mean I must renounce the modern world? Must I get rid of my job, my family, my responsibilities, and go live in a hut in the woods to find this simplicity? The answer is no. The return to the uncarved block is an internal shift, not necessarily an external one. It is not about simplifying your life circumstances. It is about simplifying the mind with which you meet those circumstances. You can live in a busy city, have a complex job, and navigate intricate relationships, all from this place of inner simplicity. It means engaging with the world's complexity without a complicated mind. It means having thoughts but not being owned by them. It means feeling emotions but not being defined by them. It means having a personality but not being imprisoned by it. It is the freedom to use the carved aspects of yourself skillfully in the world, while knowing that your true nature is the boundless, uncarved wood. There is a famous Zen story that speaks to the heart of this process of return. A proud and learned university professor who had read every book on Eastern philosophy went to visit an old Zen master to inquire about Zen. From the moment he arrived, the professor dominated the conversation, showing off his vast intellectual knowledge, quoting scriptures, and explaining complex doctrines. The Zen master listened patiently, nodding quietly. After some time, the master said, "Let us have some tea." He brought out the tea set. As the professor continued to talk, the master began to pour tea into his guest's cup. He filled the cup to the brim, and then he kept pouring. The hot tea overflowed, spilling onto the saucer and then onto the table. The professor, shocked out of his intellectual discourse, yelled, "Stop! It's full! No more will go in. The master stopped pouring, looked calmly at the professor and said, like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? This is the essential practice for returning to the uncarved block. We must be willing to empty our cup. We must be willing to let go of what we think we know, to set aside our cherished beliefs, our rigid opinions, and the complex story of me in order to discover the simple truth of what we are. This emptying is not a loss. It is the creation of a space into which wisdom can flow. How then do we live this simple presence in our daily lives? The secret is to do ordinary things with extraordinary attention. The sacred is found in the mundane, when the mind that perceives it is simple and present. When you drink a cup of tea, do not just consume it while your mind is lost in a dozen other places. Take a moment. Feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. See the steam rising, the rich color of the liquid. Inhale its aroma. Then, take a sip and truly taste it. Let the simple act of drinking tea become a complete and self-contained universe. In that moment of pure, simple attention, there is no past to regret, no future to fear, no problem to be solved. There is only the warmth, the aroma, the taste. There is only this moment. When you walk, do not just use your body as a vehicle to get from point A to point B while your mind is elsewhere. Feel the sensation of your feet making contact with the earth. Notice the subtle rhythm of your body moving through space, the feeling of the air on your skin. Let each step be an arrival, a grounding in the here and now. Let walking become a meditation. When you listen to another person, practice listening with an empty cup. Let go of the need to formulate your response while they are still speaking. Let go of the inner narrator who is judging their words or comparing them to your own experience. Simply listen. Offer them the rare and precious gift of your silent, spacious, and undivided presence. When we begin to live this way, every moment becomes an opportunity to return home. Every breath, every step, every sip of tea becomes a sacred ritual, a practice of remembering our true, simple, and unadorned nature. We discover that peace is not a distant goal that we will reach after years of arduous practice. It is not a prize to be won when we have finally fixed ourselves or perfected our lives. Peace is the fundamental quality of the uncarved block. It is the silence of the empty cup. Peace is the very fabric of this present moment, available to us right here, right now, as soon as we are willing to let go of everything unnecessary, everything that we have added on top of it. It is the simple, profound relief of allowing ourselves to be exactly what we already are. We have traveled a great distance together on this inner journey. Our exploration began on the turbulent surface of a river, caught in the chaotic currents of the unsettled modern mind. From there, we learned to find stability, not by stopping the river, but by dropping an anchor into the simple, ever-present truth of the breath. With this anchor secure, we gain the courage to look up, and we learn to see our thoughts and feelings not as ourselves, but as transient clouds passing through the vast, open sky of our awareness. We look deeper into the nature of these clouds and the sky itself, and we uncovered the profound truths of impermanence, that everything flows, and no self, that there is no solid entity being carried along in that flow. This understanding led us to the real source of our discontent, the subtle friction of dukkha. We then learned to find the silent gap between our thoughts, a doorway into our original nature, the simple, unadorned peace of the uncarved block. We have journeyed far, only to arrive with new eyes at the very place where we began. The core message of this entire journey is this: peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not an achievement to be won, a secret to be learned, or a special state to be acquired. Peace is your original condition. It is the fundamental nature of the sky, the inherent purity of the mirror, the silent hum of your own being. It is the silence that was here before your first thought, and the silence that will remain after your last thought dissolves. The path to this peace is not one of addition, of learning more, of becoming better. It is a path of subtraction, of gently letting go of all the noise, all the stories, and all the false identities that have obscured the simple truth of what you have always been. The goal is not to eliminate thinking, but to end your identification with it and to rest in the spacious awareness in which all thinking occurs. You have everything you need to continue this journey right now, in this moment. You do not need a special cushion, a silent room, or a teacher in a faraway land. The anchor of your breath is with you always, a faithful companion waiting to bring you home to the present. The sky of your awareness is forever unstained, always available as a refuge of peace and clarity. The gaps between your thoughts are always there, offering a constant invitation back to the silence. Be patient with yourself. Be kind. There is no timeline for this unfolding, no standard to which you must measure up. Simply returning your attention to your breath just once is a moment of profound practice. Noticing a single thought without believing it is a moment of freedom. The journey is made of these small, gentle moments of remembrance. The peace you seek is not somewhere else. It is not in the future. It is the very ground upon which you stand. It is the peace that you are.